A young boy is playing soccer. He made a nice pass to his partner. Young men play sports games with excitement. Soccer has always appealed to the boys. Only one man is sitting with a book in his hands. From an early age, this young man was not interested in playing games for ordinary children. The young man was more into reading novels and comic books, where there were heroes and winners. He always worried about those heroes and always dreamed of becoming one of them. It just so happened that he got into one game. He became completely immersed in it. Once at a computer club, his attention was drawn to a game that was on the monitor of a pier. He had never seen it before. After some time, our hero showed great talent for this game. He even took part in the National Cup. And having become a professional, he showed high results. The National Cup is over, the champion is congratulated on his first place. Our hero, second place. Eternal second place. It was his destiny. No matter how hard the young man tried, he could not become the main character. But one day, fate gave him a gift. On February 2nd, 2022, a tremendous change took place. Reality has changed and has become more like a game than reality. Portals to dungeons began to appear in different parts of the city. Monsters came out of these portals. To counter this phenomenon, people wielding sword or magic began to appear. These men were called the mana wielders. Now all hope was in them. Now these days, the focus is not on movie stars or famous athletes. It's the mana wielders. On all the screens there was a hero, one of whom the young man dreamed of becoming. In another interview, one of the heroes said that the most important thing was to study the dungeon thoroughly. Our hero, computer game specialist number 2, decided that he would definitely become a mana wielder. It's been 8 years. Something was going wrong for the young man. The liquor bottle was his best friend. The young man's life was moving in a different direction. No plans and goals existed in his head anymore. Once a young man got an old piece of paper in his hands. By pure chance, he unfolded it and read it. This piece of paper talked about mana and communication in the game. The young man was thanked for choosing the service, Awakening. The boy was angry with himself. All that effort was wasted. And what was it for? The young man said to himself, enough is enough. Jin Jung-do should stop chasing after a pipe dream. The young man told himself that becoming a hero was not his destiny. Finally, the young man managed to open the front door. The young man went inside and, taking off his jacket, thought that tomorrow was a day off. Finally, he would be able to get a good night's sleep. A stranger appeared in the room. She said hello to Mr. Jin Jung-do. She said that she was expecting him. The girl was strangely dressed, as if she had appeared from a fake world. Stars shone around her. The young man thought he had gotten the wrong door. He apologized and left the room. Realizing that this was his apartment after all, the young man asked who she was. And how did she end up here? The stranger bowed and introduced herself. She said that she, the empowerer of the universe, was Winry Machina. She was waiting for the one who embodies the very concept, miracle. She was here to pay her respects and give the young man a gift. The guy was trying to come to his senses. The universe? What kind of nonsense is that? Embodying the very concept of miracle. The young man thought he should stop drinking. He is so useless that the girl called his existence a miracle. Machina said that Mr. Jong-do is a very valuable person. He is the second person in the universe who has the third level of communication skill. The girl held out a glowing orb to the young man and told him to accept this gift, which the universe offers with its boundless respect for him. The guy bounced aside in fear and asked, what was she doing? He yelled for her not to touch him. The glowing orb possessed the young man. His eyes lit up. The young man began to gain skills. With fear and surprise, he screamed. When the young man came to his senses, the girl was no longer in the room. Jung-do thought, what was it? The young man was on his knees and holding his chest. The young man felt that he had been successfully added skills. Hindsight, state window, resilience, infoloteria. The young man couldn't understand what these skills were and what was happening to him. He needed answers to his questions. The young man heard within himself the answer. The stranger answered him that that was it. That was it. She was honored to meet the second miracle. The boy shouted for her not to leave. After all, he still had many questions left. Jung-do held his head. Could it be a hallucination? Or Did he drink too much this time? A virtual screen appeared in front of the young man. He remembered that one of the skills was the status window. The young man scanned this screen with his gaze. Many of the skills were clear to him. He wondered what the skill was. Infolothorea? He poked his finger at that spot. A machine with multicolored balls inside appeared in front of him. The machine spit out a single ball and it landed in the young man's arms. It was a golden capsule. The young man decided to open the capsule. There was a note in the capsule. It was a rendition of rare information. The young man looked at the sheet and couldn't tell if he was crazy. It didn't seem like a dream either. One day before, in one of the offices, a man demands attention. The employees listen to him attentively. Guild head Choi Cholyan said that they were competing with several guilds for dungeons with good quality mana crystals. Everyone should realize how serious this is. However, thanks to the fact that the team leader was able to persuade the seeker Chong, the man pointed his hand at the young man. Their guild had contracted for one of the last dungeons found. Everyone in the office began to cheer. This was indeed a great fortune. The staff approached the young man and asked him how he was able to get this contract. It is said that Seeker Jong is very picky. Therefore, even the most famous guilds pay a lot of money for him. The young man replied that it wasn't difficult for him. Another coworker walked by and said that the young man was just a pathetic negotiator. It must be so easy to get recognition from others just by having a drink with people. The guild leader told Cho Hakre to watch his tongue. The young man wondered, did he say something wrong? He's going into these dungeons risking his life. Cho Hakre added that all this young man does is drink and talk nonsense. But at the same time, everyone is praising the young man so much. It's just disgusting. The guild leader shouted, did the young man really think that hunting was the only thing needed for the guild to work? And told Hakra to close the door on the other side. Hakra agreed he was horrible. The boss said this guy's very rude. If he wasn't so good, he would have been kicked out a long time ago. John Doe said that he's already used to this person's attacks. The boss gave the money to the young man and said it was the bonus he had promised if the contract could be finalized. Jong Do thanked the guild head and thought that he was finally able to get everything together. A young man's longtime dream is to become a mana wielder. The cost of the Awakener, $300,000. Ahead was a magic machine that makes ordinary people mana wielders, and at the same time evaluates their unusual talents. The young man looked around, surprised, and said that he and Soyun could have come here alone. Why are they all here? The guild leader wondered. Had the young man forgotten? After all, 2 of their comrades would become mana holders today. Everyone who can come should be here. The doors opened and a man appeared from there. Someone shouted that the previous person had already finished. Next, it was announced that Ms. Yoon So-young could pass. The girl said she would go first. Everyone wished her luck. Jongdo saw his colleague and thought, why did he come too? Was it because of So-young? The way this guy was looking at So-yoon seemed very suspicious to him. He had a bad feeling about it, so he decided to be more careful. The young man looked at the scoreboard and thought that his mana wasn't very good, and everyone could see that. Besides, he only had 4 talents. His main talent, Vigilance. The guy thought it would be difficult to use it in combat units. That's why the Awakener is called a lottery. If there are many talents and it is fit for battles, then it can be considered lucky. One job seeker said that even when one gets 3 skills while upgrading, if those skills are not on the top list, the job seeker will still be a loser with poor talents and skills. And if the talents are unusable for dungeon exploration, then it's a waste of 300,000 money. Everyone has noticed that Soyun is on his way out. We have to look at the screen quickly. We need to know her results. Everyone was staring at the screen in silence and searched for information about this girl. What kind of talents did she have? Everyone opened their mouths in surprise. No one expected this. It wasn't a girl, but some kind of monster. Even a seasoned seeker with 3 years of experience can only have 30 mana. But getting 27 mana from the start, that's awesome. And her 11 talents. The maximum talents one received before was 13. Her main talent is Holiness. There's a new rising star. Cholyan said she's part of their guild. It's not like they have their eyes on their comrades. A lot of people wanted to recruit this girl now. Jongdo congratulated his colleague and said that she had definitely won the lottery. The young man was genuinely happy for her. The girl replied, everything seems so unreal to her. Jongdo asked, "What is she going to do now? She will be surrounded by special attention from today." Next, Mr. Jongdo was announced. The young man rejoiced. His turn had finally come. He said he would be back soon. The girl was genuinely happy for her colleague and said that he would definitely get a higher score than her. The young man thanked her and disappeared through the doorway. It looked much more natural inside than he thought it would. The young man approached the object. The young man was asked to relax and take a firm grip on the crystal ball in front of him. Jongdo realized that it was the famous Eye of Odin. The young man was told the approximate time, 10 minutes, and they added that he definitely had potential. The young man excitedly declared that he would finally become a mana wielder. He had been longing for this for so long. He'll be like the man he always wanted to be, and who he emulated in his heart. Everyone present, his guild members, looked at the screen. There was disappointment in their eyes. Cho Hakre said that he knew it. The Awakener couldn't show him how to use his talents in battle. The young man was not advised to join a combat unit. Jongdo walked out of the room. There was silence. The guild leader wanted to comfort the young man, but he didn't know what to say to him. Jongdo said that everything was fine. There was nothing to worry about. Failures can happen every day. The young men were given mana watches. Since they now have a license, the attendant on duty said that this watch contains information and details about the user. Therefore, it is recommended that you wear it at all times. Soyeon asked. Maybe the young man should leave early and get some rest. Jongdo faked a smile and asked if the girl was worried about him. There's nothing wrong with him. Life doesn't end if you just don't get to join the battle group. The day was ending again for the young man with a bottle in his hand. So this is what it's like when everything goes to shit. The young man thought that his dream, which he had been working towards for 8 years after being a professional player, had been shattered. He had a bad talent. Jongdo thought so until he looked at the virtual scoreboard. He was amazed at what he saw. How could this be possible? Who is this woman anyway? Who came out of nowhere and passed on this incredible skill to him? Skills can be obtained after leveling up, or in dungeons with low probability of skillstone appearance. The young man didn't understand what was going on. His mind was a mess right now. But he was sure of one thing. If a young person has info lottery skills, they can get information about the future. Jongdo realized one thing. He needed to study this skill more deeply. The lottery machine appeared in front of the young man again. The cost of one attempt was 1 mana. The young man opened the capsules and read the information about what would happen in the future. He could not believe his eyes. There was even information that he would step on a caterpillar in the future. Jongdo was depressed. All those predictions were useless. The young man realized that this was a skill he had gotten from the talent game. But how could roulette be so unfair? The young man has only 1 mana left. That means one last try. Jongdo saw his real-time vitals on the screen. The mana clock will only show updated parameters when it receives an update from the Awakener. If he can use the status window to find out his stats, at the moment, he will be able to better strategize for combat. This has proven to be very useful. The young man regretted that he no longer had mana. Every human regenerates mana once every 24 hours. People with a maximum reserve of 100 would recover 100 mana a day, while he would only be able to recover 7. If he had another skill, he wouldn't be able to use it whenever he wanted. The same goes for this lottery. Jongdo could just increase his stock just a little bit at a time. He should be grateful for such an incredible skill. The lottery machine produced another capsule. It was an unusual shape. The young man rejoiced. A particularly rare piece of information had been obtained. He had received information about when and where the entrance to the dungeon would appear. Jongdo stocked up and equipped himself with everything he needed. He moved in the direction he had set out to go. The young man thought, how long would he have to go? After all, he should be there soon. The young man was informed that he had reached his destination, and there would be no more signposts. Jongdo remembered that the prediction pointed to this time and this place. The young man looked at his watch and thought there was only 1 minute left. A portal appeared in front of the young man. It was incredible. His last attempt at the lottery had given him such incredible information. The young man immediately realized that this was no ordinary dungeon. It was a dungeon with treasure. Only 2 such dungeons have been officially recorded. A dragon's lair in England, and the bamboo panda forest in China. Usually dungeons disappear when people enter them, so they are not named. But sometimes dungeons get names and remain in the records even after they disappear. First, if the dungeon is destroyed, thus causing cataclysms. Second, if a legendary item was discovered in the dungeon. An Excalibur has been discovered in England. A crescent green dragon blade was discovered in China. Jungdo thought he had a chance to get his hands on a weapon comparable to those used in Southeast Asia. There are no monsters in the treasure dungeons. Everyone can get a legendary item if they pass a challenge. The young man thought that if there were no monsters, this would be his chance. Even if there were other difficulties in the dungeon, he would have an advantage because of the exploration skill. Jungdo moved forward through the portal with a little apprehension, but with a lot of eagerness. The young man thought, if there are monsters in there, he has a chance to die. The guy thought it was funny. A game in which the stakes, his life. Turns out the young man was a gambler. He thought, would there be a hero who wouldn't go in with such a trump card up his sleeve? All or nothing. The young man was discouraged. Really? Again? The dungeon he had passed through here several times before. After all, he had walked straight ahead without turning around. How could he have gotten here again? Jungdo calmed down and realized what was going on here. It was an illusion, a magic that clouded the view. He's embarrassed to use his mana, but he applied the skill. Research. The young man discovered hidden information. This wall was created with the unrivaled magic of illusion. It has been dispelled. The young man was astonished. He had unlocked the unrivaled magic of illusion. In simple words, it was dispelled. The guy thought it was very unfair at first, but he had at least one cool skill. Jungdo opened that door and walked to the other side of the wall. He decided it was time to deal with everything right here and now. The young man went inside and found himself in the company of strangers. The young man was told, "Welcome." There were only old people here. One of the old men said that the challenger looked terribly weak this time. But anyway, he was able to dispel the illusion and get here. It's certain that this young man must have some hidden talent. Jungdo looked around and realized that there were only dwarves around him. One of them looked at the young man and said, "No wonder those eyes were able to expose the illusion." He never thought that the young man would immediately recognize their race. There's no mistaking it here, the young man thought. Any way you look at it, they're dwarves. This dungeon was called the Dungeon of Mole Treasure. So dwarves are moles? And what were the dragons and pandas from the other dungeons? One of the old gnome men congratulated the young man on passing the first test and said his name was Giz. He added that in the second challenge, the young man would have to fight him. If the boy wins, you will reward him and let him out of here. The boy was frightened. The gnome stated that he would let the young man out of here anyway, even if he lost. So there's no need to worry. Jungdo asked, didn't he have to clear the dungeon to pass through? Giz asked why the young man was so surprised. There were 4 men before him that they had chased away after their failure. Giz added, hadn't the young man been told about it in the world? Jungdo replied that he hadn't heard about it. The dwarf said, the young man's world must be even more cruel than they thought. People can be very greedy. The boy asked, what about the battle? Would it be sparring? Giz told the young man to follow him. The rest of the dwarves laughed. What is this guy even talking about? What kind of sparring between the young man and Giz? People from the other world are so rude. They always want to settle things with their fists. They're 1,000 years away from that. Giz said the man before the young man attacked him with a knife. He then calmed down after Giz finished him off. The dwarf wondered if, in the young man's world, everyone attacked each other with a knife instead of a greeting. That's kind of barbaric. Jungdo thought that all these dwarves do is talk about how barbaric people are. It pisses the young man off. The dwarf said he fought humans as they wanted him to, but they always lost after the first blow. The young man was sure he was a barbarian too, with some 7 units of mana. Giz stated that they would fight by the rules of the dwarves. He was sure the young man would benefit from it. Jungdo asked why the dwarves kept inviting the barbarians over. The dwarf replied that they didn't do it because they wanted to. The young man thought it was a contract that limited their actions in return for incredible power. A strong contract will lead to death if not honored. Giz told the young man not to slow down and to hurry up. The young man squeezed through the small-sized door. He wondered why this dwarf had such a nasty temper. The boy could not believe his eyes. In the room in front of the young man was an absolute masterpiece. The dwarf stated that it had taken the strength of each of them to create it. Jung-do saw a TV and a game console in front of him. The young man pretended not to care about it. The dwarf said, "This is quite unexpected." The young man is not surprised to see such advanced technology. They will fight using it. The gnome said it would load soon and motioned for the young man to take a seat and wait. The boy thought, what chance did he have of winning at an unfamiliar game, even if he was a professional gamer? After all, this game was made by gnomes. The gnome said he would now explain to the young man how to operate the console. A lot of things seemed strange to the young man, but he had no choice. Jung-do said he thought he had seen it somewhere before. Giz replied that it was impossible. There are few places to see this kind of technology, even if you travel through a dimension. Jung-do thought that the dwarf had no idea that he was from just such a dimension. The dwarf was explaining how attacks and blocks were made. The young man thought that the character design was more close to fantasy. The arena design was also quite unusual. There were still some differences, but overall it was the same game he had played all his youth, Legends of Legends. After a while, the gnome said he had taught the young man everything and asked if he wanted to try. The lad replied he hoped he could do it, and offered to get started. Giz wondered, was the young man really ready to give up yet? He was fine with starting. The dwarf said that people from other worlds have no stamina. To think he gave up before the fight even started. The guy picked up the remote control. The game will start soon. The young man activated the skill. Game. During the game, all characteristics will be increased by 100%. The young man looked at his opponent and his cheerleader. He thought that they should be the ones to give up. The guy thought of himself as a professional gamer who broke into the tops just because of his skills. Without thinking about any tactics, the score was 0-100. The dwarf was terribly surprised. He couldn't win a single game. How could that be possible? The young man said that should be enough. Wasn't it time to bring his reward already? He expected much from the gnome's treasury. The dwarf was screaming that it wasn't fair. He wanted to get even. And he said that they play 3 more times. The young man replied, but Giz himself knows it's pointless. Giz stepped aside, but the other dwarves ran up and said they would be next. You can't talk about a sure victory by beating only one dwarf. Jung-do thought, why does he have to do this? After all, they said it was to defeat one Giz. He doesn't want to waste even more time if he doesn't get extra benefits. The boy declared that the dwarves should give him the treasure as I had promised. The dwarves decided that the boy was right. One of the dwarves said that if the man defeated them again, they would give him something much more powerful than they had originally planned. The boy thought that the gnomes had more treasure. One of the gnomes said since the lizards and bears gave a random item of their treasure trove. They decided to do the same. The young man wondered if they had made up their minds by talking about a dragon from England and a panda from China. That is, these races can communicate with each other even if they are in different dungeons. He said if the young man defeated them all, they, each of the 7 skilled craftsmen, would take up their hammer just for him. Some time passed. The dwarves were exhausted. They could not win. They had failed to land even a single blow. How is that possible? The young man apologized. He said that he had been playing, completely oblivious to the level of his opponents. He acted like a barbarian. The game should be fun for everyone. Next time, he will use only 2 fingers when playing. The dwarf said there was nothing to be done, and ordered the young man to sit still. He must examine him. The dwarves wondered, what about the young man's characteristics? Did he really go into the dungeon alone with such parameters? He only had 7 mana. Why does he have so few talents? The gnome looked through his special glasses and couldn't believe what he saw. Jung-do asked, wondering if something was wrong. The dwarf told his coworker that there was no way he could deal with this guy. The coworker said he's busy too. Just need to get this analysis done faster. The dwarf said he can't. That's why he's asking for support. The colleague said, what kind of skilled craftsman is his opponent after that? One only has to look at this young man's talents. A colleague saw that the young man had a level 2 skill in the game. This, cheater. The first dwarf told the colleague to watch the other. A colleague said that the 3rd level is communication. The dwarves were surprised. Is there really no concept in the young man's world? Talent level? The guy had only recently learned that talent had a level at all. Jung-do remembered the stranger saying that he was very valuable. The gnome said the young man's world was terribly backward. If his skills and talents are passed down in his family, he will be able to gain a 2nd level. The third level has a completely different potential. For example, if it has the swordsman skill, it will be the beginning of the entire art of sword wielding, which will spread throughout the universe. A unique original born from the true universe. The old gnome man said that this ability allows you to create the essence itself. To meet the young man, an honor for anyone. The gnome added that originally, he had thought of doing something to be able to balance out his low characteristics. But the third level of the skill had too much potential. Therefore, he summoned a colleague. He can see the future, so he's the best to deal with such circumstances. The gnome added that with the help of his colleague, they would be able to create an outfit that would suit the young man best. Zhang-do was surprised. Could this gnome really see the future? The specialist stretched and said he hadn't been this tired in a long time. The old man added that it was very interesting to fight with this young man. It had been a long time since he had been so eager to create something extraordinary. The old man chased his colleagues into the workshop. He said they should not stand around and pick up walls. The foreman did not let the young man into the workshop. He told him to stay where he was. If he went in with them, he would melt in a flash. The old man said it wouldn't take long. The young man would just have to wait. The boy wondered what the dwarves were going to create. Giz came out of the workshop and said they were finished. He tossed the young man a piece of jewelry in his hands. Zhang-do held the bracelet in his hands. It was off the heat, so the metal part of it was still warm. The young man wondered if it was too fast. Maybe they had tricked him and just pulled something out of their vault. The old man said they had someone who could see the future. Did he really think they couldn't control time? The gnome added, "If a weakling like this young man takes the treasure with him, he will have to face evil mobs. If he doesn't like it, he can return this bracelet." Zhang-do replied, "He didn't say he didn't like it." The young man thought, "Are all dwarves really that powerful?" The guy thought they were going to destroy him if he asked how to use the bracelet. He decided to use the research mode and find out for himself. The gnome, the seer, gave the young man a sack of something. He told the young man to take it. He was lucky enough to see the third level of the skill, so this would be payment. Zhang-do looked into the bag and saw that there were mana crystals. The gnome said there were a couple of particularly good ones. The young man could sell them or keep them. The young man decided that if he sold them for a very high price, he would get rich. He thanked the old man. Giz says they're letting the young man go because they're done. But first, he has something he wants to say to the young man. The old man said he hadn't been this happy in thousands of years, and he suggested that if he could, the young man should come again. The boy didn't have time to thank the dwarf before he was hit hard on the head with his fist. Sparks flew from his eyes. In the next moment, the young man was lying on the grass. His backpack and a bag of mana crystals were beside him. Zhang-do grabbed his head in pain. He wanted to say something to the gnome. The young man opened his eyes and saw that he was back at the foot of the mountain. He realized that he had returned from the dungeon. The young man had the feeling that he was dreaming it all. But the bracelet on his arm said otherwise. The bump on his head was real too. The young man thought that he even respected the dwarves, and how hard-working and skillful they are. Zhang-do activated the virtual screen in front of him and started the research mode. He was interested in the bracelet. After studying the data, the young man was a little frustrated. Was this really it? The increase in performance was an incredible bonus, but the legend said that Excalibur and the Green Dragon Crescent Blade could cut monsters in half in just one swing. Is this bracelet too weak? The ability to change his form into any weapon he presents sounds kind of vague too. All of this would be very useful for the awakened combat type, but after all, he doesn't have a single combat skill. The guy remembered about his info lottery. The young man had used a research twice, so he should have 5 mana now. If you also take into account the free try once a day, he has a total of 6 tries. The guy decided to try his luck. Zhang-do was upset that he didn't get anything good. The next day came. The young man walked into the office and wished everyone a good morning. The head of the guild looked at the young man and said that he had deigned to come to work today. The young man found the office deserted. The young man saw that Soyun wasn't at the place. The chief said that the girl worked yesterday, so he gave her the day off for today. He added that they were both awakened, but giving only one of them time off was a bit unfair. Zhang-do asked the boss, "Where did the employees from the combat unit go?" The boss replied that he had also given them time off, so that they could get some rest before the expedition. There were only 6 days left before the expedition. Jung-do thought, did the boss do this on purpose to keep him away from Cho Hakre? The young man thought that his boss looked very stern, but inside he was very judicious. In any other guild, he would have been thrown out on the street by now, as he was a total zero as a mana wielder. The leader asked if Jung-do was going to participate in this expedition. Even if a young man has bad talents, he still needs to get his first skill. Once in a while, people get a good skill and become part of a combat unit. The boy replied that of course he would go. That's why he joined the guild. The boss wondered where the young man had gotten that bracelet. It looked pretty cheap. The young man squinted his eyes and said he had just been given it. The guy decided that no one should know that he had gone to the dungeon with the treasure. The young man thought that this would be a great opportunity for him to try out the Lord of all weapons and to test the dwarf's gift in action. The day to start the expedition had arrived. The boss asked Cho Hakre if he knew what time it was already. Hakre replied that he had to deal with unforeseen circumstances. The guild leader said to have Jung-do check the analyzer to make sure of the information that Seeker Jong had given him. The young man said that everything was ready. A rank D, destructive type dungeon for a maximum of 10 people. Everything was as they had been told. The guild leader said that thanks to someone, they're late, but he'll instruct them anyway. The boss reminded them that this is a rank D dungeon. Their goal is to collect as many mana crystals as possible. Also, they have to help the team leader, John Doe and So-young, level up. So, we should let the youngsters destroy the mobs. Hakre told our hero that he came even with such useless talents after waking up. Isn't he ashamed of himself? The guy replied that at least he wasn't late because he forgot to go to the bathroom. Hara noticed that the young man was a bit too talkative for an ordinary handyman. He seemed to expect a good skill once he leveled up. Jung-do replied that that's exactly what he's counting on. But until he tries it, he won't know. Boss said that the combat squad would include all 6 of them. That would definitely be enough for a rank D dungeon, even though this squad was larger than necessary during the expedition to the rank C dungeon. 2 of their rank B comrades died, and only Cho Hokre and the 2 rank C guys were able to survive. This was something everyone should remember. Safety first, everyone must follow the captain's orders. The guild leader said, the most important thing was for no one to relax. The boss said the expedition is starting. Everyone must return alive. The young men entered the dungeon through a portal. Just as the group entered the dungeon, they were already expected. The young man said, did the lizard really get them from the start? Hakre said, keeping out of the way and out of the way. Hakre, using his skill and combat experience, immediately dealt with the enemy. Everyone was amazed at what they saw. This young man was certainly a brute, but definitely an expert in his field. Jung-do understood what it meant to have an A rank. Hakre said that he let that monster live, and he told Ms. So-young to destroy it. So-young killed the monster, plunging her sword into its chest. Hakre added that the mana crystals from the corpses would be collected by Jin Chong-do. He must not miss a single mana crystal. So-young remarked that she should take it up as the youngest. Hakre replied that social hierarchy means nothing here. Once a group enters the dungeon, everyone is equal. Jong-do said that he would be collecting those mana crystals. Jong-do told the girl that it's okay, and he would do it. Hakre told them to keep up and keep up the pace. Hakre stood near another monster and called out to Ms. So-young. The girl replied that she had already destroyed the past 2 monsters. Let this monster and the next one be destroyed by Jong-do. That would be fair. Hakre said that Ms. So-young doesn't understand something. They don't have to be honest. So-young was surprised. How could Hakre say such a thing? The young man said that the girl had 27 mana and 11 talents. Such stars were rare, even in their region. And Jung-do only had 7 mana and 3 trash talents. Hakre said, after all, it's obvious who he should give a chance to for the sake of their guild's future. The girl objected. She said that the guild leader would never think that. Hakre said that here he had the right to decide how this expedition would proceed. The young man recalled that the guild leader said for everyone to follow his orders. Or is he wrong? One of the contestants said that this Hakre guy was pissing her off already. She has never liked him. A co-worker added that he never uses any tactics or teaches beginners. They decided to complain about him as soon as they are done. It seemed strange to them. Hakre was a scoundrel, but he respected the guild leader. Hakre was ready to face the monsters coming at him. Jong-do realized that the squad members would complain about Hakre to the head of the guild. Is he so stupid that he doesn't know the consequences? What the hell is he thinking? After another battle, a bunch of corpses of ruthless monsters were left in the room. Jongdo thought that Soyug had gotten 10% of the required amount of experience. Maybe it was for the best. We should have followed Hakre further. The squad arrived at the next room. All that remained was to open the doors. Suddenly, there was a roar and a huge monster with glowing eyes appeared. It moved straight towards Jongdo. Someone in the squad noticed that this boss monster was very different from the others. Hakre fearlessly attacked the monster, and wielding his swords, he began to destroy it. The young men thought the young man was being extremely violent. The monster was destroyed. Hakre noticed that he needed one decisive blow to do it. The young men thought that this Hakre definitely deserved an A rank. Everything ended well. It was definitely better than standing in suspense waiting for another battle. The young man said, if Soyoung got all the experience points she needed, should let them finish off this monster Jongdo and get out of here. The young man added, after all, they should help newcomers level up. How can you give all the experience to one Ms. Soyoung? Hakre said he didn't care. That, in any case, none of them would leave here alive. Suddenly, Jongdo shouted for his colleague to dodge. The guy didn't react in time and found himself pierced through and through by the sword. With an icy stare, Hakre stabbed his sword at his colleague right in the chest. Hakre said he thought he was about to die of boredom. A member of his group fell to his knees. Everyone thought that Hakre, the madman's eyes lit up with rage. He began to spin his swords, and everyone realized that he was serious. Hakre pounced on his companions. They were confused and had no time to do anything. The villain was destroying them with his weapon. The survivors were Jongdo and Soyoung. Hakre asked, this must be their first time seeing someone die? I wonder why they aren't screaming. Jongdo asked with surprise. What did he do? Hakre looked around at his companions. They were lying there, defeated by the wretch. The rascal laughed and said that a pleasant feeling now visited him. Jongdo realized that every second was precious. He applied his research skill. Jongdo saw that the body snatcher was in front of him. It turned out that Hakre had been a killer all along. Last time, in that dungeon, he had also destroyed his two co-workers. Hakre headed straight for the young men and said that Jongdo was quick-witted, but not fast enough, because those two are about to die by his hand. Hakre added that he honestly didn't really want to rush things, but after Soyun's awakening, he couldn't keep his temper any longer. The villain said that the girl had incredible powers. How strong will he become when he destroys Soyun and absorbs her power? Hakre added that it was very difficult for him to hold back. Hakre added that he had nothing against Jongdo. No one would care about his behavior because he looks like a fraud. Hakre stated that as compensation, he would destroy Jongdo with one punch. Hakre swung around and tried to land a striking blow on his opponent. Hakre was surprised. How was Jongdo able to block his punch? He didn't intend to throw a full force punch, because he wanted to torture his opponent a bit. But that strength should have been enough to destroy the sword in his hands. Hakre noticed that his opponent's sword didn't look ordinary. He immediately noticed the Lord of all weapons. Suddenly, Soyun ran up to her opponent. She threw a punch at him and asked him how he did it. Hakre fended off the blow and counterattacked the girl. He told her to sit still and wait for her turn. He'll deal with her after he tears Jongdo apart. Jongdo saw Soyoung fly off to the side and involuntarily cried out. Hakre said that he couldn't hold back tears from that melodramatic picture. Jongdo ran up to the girl and tried to support her. She coughed and wriggled in pain. Hakre told his opponents not to look serious. He suggested that they just have fun. Jongdo thought to himself, what should he do? The difference in their abilities is so huge that he couldn't figure out how to fight his opponent. Soyoung tells Jongdo that she's fine. Jongdo turned on their search mode. Jongdo was interested at the moment in how much Ms. Soyoung could be counted on. The guy saw that the girl had raised her level. Jongdo said to use her mana as if she was trying to create a shield. The young man said that he would explain the details later. The girl concentrated, and indeed, a protective shield formed around her. Hakre thought that this shield was impenetrable. How could this be possible? For a newbie to use such a skill on his first expedition. The villain tried to attack his opponents. He failed. The shield was impenetrable. Hakre said that it was only getting more interesting. He decided to raise the stakes. Jongdo yelled for the girl to hold on a little longer. He had a plan. The young man said if he destroyed the boss monster now, they could get out of here. Hakre figured out his opponent's plan. He got angry. It turns out that's what he was up to. Hakre shouted that he wouldn't let him do it. The villain shattered So-young's protective shield with a strong sword strike and rushed towards Jung-do. Jung-do didn't waste a second. He pierced the boss monster's body with a powerful punch. Hakre stopped. He pretended that this was a fight he had lost. The rascal laughed and said that his heart even squeezed a little. Did Jung-do really think that they would get out of here once he destroyed the boss monster? Hakre added that Jung-do left out a small detail. The young man cannot leave the dungeon immediately after destroying the boss monster. He will need to wait at least 10-30 minutes. Hakre added, "It seems even a genius like Jung-do didn't know that." Jung-do muttered something. The villain put his hand to his ear and asked what the young man said. He seemed so frightened that he couldn't speak properly. Jung-do said that the villain miscalculated this time. Jung-do said that he wanted to level up. The young man was informed that he had reached the second level and obtained the skill, Linking Lottery. This means that he can borrow the skill of a randomly chosen person recorded in the true universe. Jung-do showed his opponent that he was using a skill he had learned. The young man stated that Hakre was now the victim. The villain saw his opponent transforming. There was a powerful energy emanating from him. Hakre couldn't understand what was even going on. After all, it wasn't even a skill. He had just given the mana a physical form. The villain thought he could not allow this to happen. He lunged at his opponent with the desire to destroy him. Before he could do anything, Jung-do repelled the enemy's attack with a weapon that appeared out of nowhere in his hands. Jung-do was pleasantly surprised. He had a heavenly halberd in his hands. It was a deadly weapon. The young man activated the status window. He needed more information. The boy realized that he was holding the weapon of the legendary hero Liuibu. It was the weapon the man had wielded before his death. Guy didn't realize how hard he should hold the halberd in his hands, or at what angle to strike, or how hard to attack. The young man felt that his body knew it all. This is the Linking Lottery. Hakre shouted that his opponent is still trash. He can't overcome the limits of his abilities. However, Jung-do was skillful in wielding this deadly weapon. The opponent couldn't understand how he could do it. Hakre shouted for his opponent to stop pretending. Did he think he'd be afraid of a weakling like him? The rogue shouted that he was about to destroy the young man and swung his swords at him. Jung-do responded with a precise swing of his halberd. Hakre thought he had already reached his goal. His opponent stood uncovered in close proximity to him. Hakre decided that at this distance, even an S-class hunter wouldn't be able to dodge his strike. Suddenly, Jung-do swung his halberd sharply and chopped his opponent's swords apart. Jung-do told his opponent to burn in hell. And with a precise movement of his halberd, he struck the villain. Jung-do said that even an A-grade Cho Hakre was not his equal. The young man thought that, in that case, he had reached the S-class, and perhaps even surpassed him. Jung-do decided that it might even be the SS class. This phenomenon depends on certain conditions. Only 9 people on Earth have the SS class. The boy thought he needed to learn more about this skill. But there were more important things right now. He rushed over to So-yoon. The young man tried to translate the girl into feelings. He thought she didn't look good. When will they be able to get out of here? Jung-do heard someone over his shoulder say, "It seems like the girl used too much internal energy. She has symptoms of ki distortion." Jung-do looked back and said that voice scared him. Who is he? The stranger was surprised. He said that the young man himself had summoned him to this era. The young man realized that you are General Liuibu in front of him. The general said that the young man could just call him Feng Xian. The general asked, "Shouldn't the young man be more concerned about the girl?" The lad had caught himself. Indeed, he had forgotten about her for a moment. The general, looking at the girl, said that it didn't seem very serious. She's in this state because she used a lot of internal energy in a short period of time. Feng Xian advised the young man to transfer energy to her through the life gate point. Jung-do thought that when he was doing the negotiations, many enlightened ones talked about mana as internal energy. The general said that now the girl just needed some rest and she would come back to normal. The young man thanked the warrior and said it was all thanks to his help. The general said that he should be the one thanking the young man for getting him out of that boring place. Feng Xian noticed that his time was coming to an end. The general added, "He speaks of the time he can be present here thanks to this halberd. Albeit briefly, it was fun." The general expressed the hope that the young man would challenge him next time. The boy replied that he would very much like to. But it all depended on his luck. The general said they would meet much sooner than the young man believes. Jong-do was left with So-young as the only survivors of this battlefield. The young man waited for the portal to activate so he could leave the dungeon. He had to save his friend. The guild leader saw that the portal had activated. He received the data that the dungeon had been successfully cleared. Jong-do appeared on the surface. In his arms was So-young. The guild leader was surprised. Jong-do was carrying Ms. So-young in his arms. The girl was unconscious. It was obvious that they were tired. The deputy asked, "Where are the others?" If they are not together after clearing the dungeon, then something terrible might have happened. The guild leader told the young man to stop talking a lot and immediately examine the surviving warriors. Ms. So-young was placed on a stretcher. The medical team began transporting her. The guild leader asked the young man if he was all right. I could tell from his eyes that the boss was guessing a lot of things. Jong-do said that he had a lot to tell the guild head about. After finishing his story, Jong-do stated that Joe Hakre had been a murderer for a long time. The young man reached his hand forward and said that he had Jong Yuna's camera. She had participated as a support. The guild leader had the opportunity to see everything Hakre was doing in the dungeon. The boss screamed in grief and said Cho Hakre, a ruthless scoundrel. The commander said it was all his fault. He was blinded by that guy's high-end performance. That's why he sent him to the dungeon. Jong-do said that no one knew his true identity. He skillfully hid his identity all this time. The guild leader shouldn't blame himself. It seemed that Hakre had a skill that allowed him to become stronger after destroying people. So the same thing happened in the previous expeditions. Jong-do said that it was most likely Hakre's work. He could destroy anyone he wanted and hide all the evidence in the dungeon. Then they wouldn't have any evidence against him. The guild leader said, if the rules about mana holders having to take cameras into dungeons hadn't been lifted, then none of this would have happened. The guild leader asked the young man what happened next. Jong-do couldn't let anyone know that he possessed an item like the bracelet. After all, then everyone he knew, including himself, might be in danger? The young man said that the lizard they had defeated had mutated. Mutations are fairly rare, but there have been recorded instances where a monster was able to utilize a skill of a human who entered a dungeon. The boss noticed that there was almost no precedent for something like this after the Great Catastrophe. But a D-class dungeon boss would still have a hard time destroying Hakre even after obtaining the skill, and asked if the skill he had gained through mutation was stealth? The young man confirmed. The boss monster attacked Hakre from behind as he tried to destroy him and So-young. Hakre cut off the monster's head, but his wounds were still fatal. The guild leader said it's karma. To think of dying from the skill of the person he destroyed. The boss told the young man to go home to rest. They would discuss the details later. The young man bowed out. Jong-do looked into So-young's room. The girl was still unconscious. The boy came home and plopped down on the couch. He only now felt how tired he was. The young man thought that he still needed to scrutinize what he couldn't examine earlier. So he activated the virtual screen. The guy noticed that when he clicked on the lottery info arrow, an info box with different categories appeared. This is where the guaranteed lottery was introduced. The young man saw that he had information regarding the mana wielders he had met earlier. The young man found what he was looking for. It was the map of General Luibu Fengxian. It was worth 99 mana. Jong-do was surprised. This was too much for a person with 10 mana like him. And the question was about the 3 additional cards. Dwarves were on the cards. Their cost was even higher. If that was their cost, a human would never have enough mana to summon them. The young man wondered why there were only 2 of them here. The guy was interested in the names of the others. In order for their names to be entered into the database, he would have to meet them in person and find out their names. The young man realized that the true power of this ability was that he would be able to load the skills he needed depending on the situation. To use the ability to its maximum potential, he needs to familiarize himself with low-level but famous mana wielders. The last card that raised a question in the young man's mind was dedicated to Winry Machina, worth 999 mana. This was the girl who visited his home. The guy thought that his first priority was to increase his mana limit. In order to increase his stats, he would need to level up or use luck with Binding Lottery. The young man decided to try to use the Binder Lottery. Now was the time. All the young man's attempts were in vain. He did not get anything worthy. The young man felt that he was haunted by failure. Midnight. The open area in front of Jong-do's house. Jong-do decided that this place would be a good fit for him. The young man realized that his mana had fully recovered, so he decided to give it a try. Every use looked incredible. The guy felt like things were happening differently now. Different sensations. It felt completely different than when he had summoned Luba. The young man thought he must be imagining things. Something had happened to his eyes. Liu Shan appeared before the young man. This is the man who brought about the decline of the Han dynasty, founded by Liu Bei during the Three Kingdoms. It was the epitome of irresponsibility. Zhang Do heard himself being asked, how dare he think in such a disrespectful way? The young man turned around and saw that Liu Shan was in front of him. Liu Shan said that he is the man who stands at the head of the entire human race. He is the second emperor of the Han dynasty, and the man who has power over everything in this world. The emperor asked why the young man had a face like he had eaten something wrong. The emperor said, seeming disappointed in the young man's abilities, "But it is not strength that determines a man's usefulness." Zhang Do thought, when will things go back to normal? The emperor shouted for the young man to pay attention to his talents. Zhang Do activated the virtual screen and looked at this emperor's talents. Zhang Do concluded that the emperor just had good luck. The emperor cried out that Liu Shan's good luck was not just good luck. He survived when he was surrounded by the army in the Battle of Changban. He was also the crown prince to the emperor. Liu Shan was always fed and had a good life in another country after his own kingdom fell. Zhang Do asks the emperor, and what is his good luck doing? He doesn't think it can be useful in the dungeons. Liu Shan was surprised. Did the young man still not understand? The boy didn't understand what the emperor was trying to tell him? Did he really want him to go to the casino? And then it hit the young man. The emperor said, finally getting through to the man. Zhang Do realized that the question was about the info lottery. The guy immediately decided to apply it. The young man decided to use his luck to the fullest. The lottery machine spit out a golden capsule. It was indeed luck. The young man shouted that Mr. Liu Shan had helped him a lot. The emperor was pleased with himself. Zhang Do hugged the emperor and said that starting today, they would meet much more often. The emperor pushed back and yelled that he shouldn't do that. The young man received information that there will be a new dungeon on the plains in 3 months. Of the possible rewards, it was a skill stone. Young didn't know what kind of skill stone it would be, but he thought he could get a few million money for it. Therefore, this was just super. Liu Shan said, the young man seemed to have completely forgotten about him. The guy noticed that he was just about to ask a question. Zhang Do wondered why the emperor was so favorable to him. Isn't he distracting him from his well-deserved rest? Liu Shan said not at all. He was grateful that the young man had summoned him. Zhang Do noted that Luibu had told him the same thing. What are they doing there before he calls them in? Weren't they in heaven or hell? Liu Shan said that the young man was greatly mistaken. After all, he was not the real Liu Shan who existed in the true universe. The emperor said that he was just a fake created from data stored in the true universe. Zhang Do said he didn't understand anything. The young man began to realize what it all meant. It was possible to download the abilities of one of the personalities registered in the true universe. Zhang Do thought that he was downloading not only the abilities, but also all the information about the individual. And by doing so, creates a new personality that can think and talk independently. The young man thought that this was a level 3 communication. The more he learns about a skill, the more amazing that skill seems to him. Liu Shan said that in other words, the young man is his creator. Therefore, that's why he favors the young man. Zhang Do said that he still can't believe the reality of what is happening. Liu Shan advised the young man to take it more simply. Didn't the representative of the universe tell him that it was a gift? That a gift is a sign of favor. The guy should think of it in a more positive way. Whomever he summons will also help the young man the best he can. Zhang Do thanked the disappearing emperor. The emperor said that his time was up. He was pleased to meet the young man. The next day, the guild leader said that from this day forward, the Justice Guild would be dissolved. The boss said that he had tried recruiting more mana holders, but their cost had skyrocketed due to the economic bubble. Besides, there are rumors that they have had a lot of people die in too short a period of time. Therefore, he could safely say that there was no way they would be able to recruit new workers. The boss bowed to the young men and said it was his fault. Left alone, Choi Cholyan asked the young man if he was going to continue to be a mana wielder. The young man nodded affirmatively. The boss said that luck would not necessarily be on the young man's side next time either. That he survived is truly a miracle of miracles. Does he really want to keep working anyway? John Doe replied that he will continue to live his life as a possession. That's his goal. The boss said he knew the young man would say something like that. The guild leader held out an envelope to the young man. Jong Do wondered what it was. It was an entrance form for the Mana Wielder Association's academy. If their guild could no longer help the young man raise his level, then he should gain experience elsewhere. The enrollment would be in a week. He would hand the same papers to So-yoon as soon as he saw her. The boss added, "Who knows if the girl will want to continue this case?" John Doe stated that she is much stronger than him. Therefore, he's pretty sure that she won't say no. The guild leader said that young people really don't think about those who are worried about them. The boss added, he realizes that these are completely unrelated topics, but as someone involved in this and the young man should know. They found another mana watch among Hakure's things. The boss added that it looked like Hakure was a member of another guild. The Karma Guild. Karma is the largest cross-national guild in the entire world. It has the largest number of members. Its members call their leader the head of the cult. They won't hesitate to become killers for him. They're just a pseudo-guild of fanatics. The boss told the young man that he should be more careful. No one knows what they will accept after losing a precious member. Jong Do thought that this must be another reason for the dissolution of their guild. The interlocutor said that he would tell So-yoon about it at the hospital. Therefore, they should both be careful. The young man thanked his boss for his concern. The man said that this young man is thankful for being a part of the guild all this time. He hopes that John Doe will achieve his goals. Jong Do thanked his interlocutor for teaching him many things. The next day came. Again, the young man failed in the lottery. The emperor told the young man that luck would not always follow him. If luck decides everything in this world, then why did Shuhan turn into ruins? Jong Do thought that the emperor was right. His skill is level 2, not level 3. No one would guarantee that he would always get something rare. Even though Liu Shan is very good with the lottery, the young man decided to start spinning the binder lottery from the next day to increase his characteristics. That's what he wanted to do, but he did it the old way again. Jong Do excused himself and said he thought he would definitely get lucky today. The next day came. The boy decided that today he would definitely spin the binder lottery. The young man prayed to the heavens that he would be lucky this time. He did. The boy noted that the coveted academy was in front of him. Jong Do renewed his mana clock at the Awakener to take the entrance test. Thanks to the Lord of all weapons, his stats are unusually high for level 2. It was also a credit to the gold card that fell to him in the linking lottery. Bradamante introduced herself as one of Charlemagne's 12 paladins. She asked the young man if he was the one who had summoned her. Jong Do scratched the back of his head. Unfortunately, he had no idea who she was. The young man asked, "Who was she?" At that moment, So-yoon walked over. The young man asked how she was feeling. The girl said she felt fine. So-yoon winked and said that she had a very high stamina score. The girl said that a long time ago, to see Jaeon-do perform in tournaments, she always ran to get good places. Jong Do took the girl under his arm and said they were getting out of here. The girl stopped the young man and said she had something to tell him. The boy decided that this was to be expected. If he found out about her skills before she had time to update her watch, she was beginning to suspect him. Jong Do struggled to come up with an excuse for himself. Suddenly, the girl turned around and said that she was ready to go. Jong Do decided that she was too good for him. Is she pretending not to notice? Even guessing that he's hiding something. The young man rushed after his companion and asked that she wait for him. Possession Academy. To defend a dungeon, Mana wielders must complete a 1-month course. Those who are members of the guild gain experience directly from the guild. Those who are not in guilds receive their education at the State Academy. Many of the apprentices prefer the individualized training that the guild provides. They feel it is better than an academy course where everyone is trained at the same time. Also, many people do not enter the academy because of the entrance test. At the entrance test, the young man noticed that there were many people present. Instructor Kim Suntae, Class B, said the academy entrance test will begin soon. It is necessary to hit this toy as hard as possible. If the applicant gets a result higher than 30 points, he passed. The instructor called Mr. Jang Chaewon to come up and try to take the test. Chaewon said that scoring 30 points was the easiest thing to do. He thought he could pass the test without much difficulty. The young man swung his arm and hit the toy with all his might. The toy bear's eyes lit up and sparks flew in all directions. A number appeared on the scoreboard, 27. The instructor said the young man had failed the test and said the next applicant might be suitable. Chaewon said that was impossible. This device must be broken. The guy did not agree with this result and asked for another try. The instructor struck a blow on this toy. A number appeared on the scoreboard, 88. Chaewon was discouraged. He realized that he had failed the test. Jung-do was amazed, 88 points. So-young said that this instructor incredibly strong. The instructor said that this device is not broken and reiterated that Chaewon failed the test. The next contestant, having struck, received 10 points. He failed the test. Another applicant, struck, got 25 points. She failed the test. One lucky person hit the device and got 30 points. He passed. Finally, the instructor called out to Ms. So-yoon. The girl prepared to hit the device with all her might. So-yoon swung around and hit the surface with all her might. A number appeared on the scoreboard, 67. The instructor said that the girl had passed. Jung-do was very happy for his friend. The instructor was impressed. He said that with skills like that, the biggest guilds in the country would fight for this girl. Why did she decide to join the academy? Jung-do congratulated So-young and said that she got a great score. The girl stated, she's sure the guy will get more. The instructor announced that Mr. Jin Jong-do was invited. So-young told him to try really hard. The guy thought that only 30% of the participants passed this test. He thought that someone with such mediocre abilities like him could hardly pass the test. Jung-do knew that he had an incredible item that increased all of his characteristics by 10 points. Jung-do tried to put all his strength into it and kick the machine. The impact was so strong that the structure came off the floor and flew upwards. The machine was lying on the side. There was a number on the scoreboard, 91. Everyone around him thought, could he really have scored 91 points? That was only 5 points short of the academy record. The instructor said the young man passed this test. So-young thought that this young man was definitely hiding something. Jung-do thought that he had overdone it. 1 month had passed. The guild head was telling the men attacking him that she was recovering from the injuries she had received in the dungeon. The men offered the guild head any kind of money. They asked, where is the saint now? They offered to do whatever the guild leader wanted if he gave them even one clue. One of the men saw the envelope labeled Academy and decided that the young men were no longer part of his guild. A man called his office and said they'd found a saint and asked them to send people to the academy. Training at the academy lasts 1 month. Theory on monsters and dungeons is covered in the first week. Next week is weapons training. Contingency training takes place in the 3rd week, and general field training in the remaining 4th week. There will be a test on the last day of school to see if the student is ready to graduate. So-young thought that the graduation test would be tomorrow. She doubted that she would be able to pass it. Jung-do looked very calm. Isn't he worried at all? Suddenly, an agent appeared near the girl. He was hiding in the bushes. The young man said hello to Ms. So-yoon and said that he was a representative of the Orient Guild. He said that he wanted to talk to the girl. So-yoon turned around and ran away. She yelled that she didn't want to join their guild. The agent yelled that they were willing to provide her with better conditions. The girl was hiding from the agent around the corner. She'd heard that admissions data was highly classified. How could they possibly know? Another young man approached the girl from behind and asked what was bothering her. The man said he was willing to help the girl. The stranger handed Ms. So-yoon a booklet and said he was a representative of the Rams Guild. Without a word, the girl turned around and ran away from the agent too. There was already a crowd of men running after her. The girl shouted that she wouldn't join any guild and asked to be left alone. So-yoon managed to run inside the building and locked herself inside. The agents shouted for the girl to come out immediately. So-young hid in the academy's dining hall. She took a seat at the table with Jung-do. The young man asked, really, are they inviting her again? They even snuck into the academy. The girl noticed that the day before, they followed her even to the training room. Jung-do noticed that she would be treated special wherever she joined. Why wouldn't she take advantage of this offer and choose the guild that provides the most favorable conditions? So-yoon said that she would live her life as she wished. The young man did not contradict her. The girl suggested that her date go out after graduation. Just her and him. Just the two of us. A colleague jumped up to the young man, and he said, that's where they are. The young man also said hello to Ms. So-yoon. The girl said hello in return. The guy asked Jian, do if he's ready for the test tomorrow? Because he can't even eat with excitement. Kang Haeshik, who placed 3rd in the entrance exam, asked if Jung-do might want to practice with him later. It really helps to relax a lot. Jung-do replied that he didn't like fighting much. The interlocutor suggested, do it at least once. After all, he wouldn't be able to hurt himself in the virtual space anyway. The young men settled into their chairs and plunged into the virtual space. It was a device created with magic that replicated an avatar based on the real body's performance. Thus, it turned out that people could fight as if they were in some kind of game. Jong-do realized that the problem was precisely the game. If his talent game was activated, his characteristics would be doubled. Jong-do thought that if he got used to these parameters, he would drive himself into depression with his real characteristics. It's better to stay as far away from it as possible. The opponent unfortunately thought that the talent game only applied to mechanical devices. In that case, he has no one else to train with. Unexpectedly, Soyun said that she was willing to fight him. Kang Heshik was overjoyed. After all, up until now, the girl had always refused when he asked her out. The girl stated that she was very stressed right now. Soyun took it very literally and immediately slammed a punch into Heshiku's chest. The young man flew backward with a scream. He fell to the ground. The young man shouted, "Did she really want to destroy him?" The girl, calming down a little, asked, "What was he talking about?" Soyun added, "After all, this is a virtual space." After all, Heshik himself had said that there was no way it could harm the real body. Heshik forgot that there was a girl in front of him and said that in that case, he too would put his best foot forward. Soyun struck with such power that her opponent could do nothing against her. He only had time to defend himself. The young man couldn't understand where she was a saint. Jong-do, watching this fight, decided that the girl was being very rude. Although Soyoung's attacks were definitely strong, but Heshika's ability to block all these attacks was also at a very high level. The guy was shouting that he wasn't in any pain at all. Soyun dodges and delivers a very strong punch right to her opponent's jaw. The blow was so powerful that the young man threw his head back and flew upward. The instructor watching from the sidelines thought the young men were studying for tomorrow's test. The teacher thought he had very high hopes for Mr. Jong-do. It was all because of a strong first impression. When I took the placement test, the instructor recalled that it was exactly the same 3 years ago. There was a monster that broke the 90-point mark. He had the highest number of talents among all of them. It wasn't often that one could find a weirdo who turned down all the invitations to the guild and entered the academy. Shortly after graduating from the academy, something terrible happened. The difference between him and Jong-do is only 5 points. Since there were not as many entrants in the past as there are now, the results were measured a little differently to increase the number of students a little. The instructor thought, if he were to use this device now, what result would he get? The final test of the academy. We have to pass the Class E dungeon. The instructor said if they passed this test, they would become true hunters who had the right to enter the dungeon. A Class B instructor will go with them for backup. The instructor once again warned that one must not let his guard down in the dungeon. Soyun, antes de entrar en el laberinto, estaba un poco asustado. The girl remembered Cho Hakrae. Jong-do walked over to Soyoung and told her to come back unharmed. She would definitely get through this Class E dungeon in no time. The girl smiled back at the young man and said she would be back soon. The instructor gave the command that everyone could enter. The students took turns disappearing into the portal. Jong-do looked after the girl and said that she shouldn't be in trouble. Heshik agreed. He remembered how she'd beaten him up, and he said that the girl shouldn't be worried. Those who remained outside received a message that the monster boss had been destroyed. The message was sent by the cheerleaders. Soyun appeared outside and said that fortunately everything went smoothly. The girl smiled sincerely. Hashik told Soyoung that Jong-do was really worried about her. Jong-do said that it's only natural. The instructor announced that Team B should get ready. Jong-do warned Heshik that their team was now moving out. The girl told the young man to come back alive and well. Jong-do suggested that she go eat something delicious after they were done here. Heshik asked if they could take him with them. Jong-do agreed. Soyoung wasn't satisfied. The instructor checked and said everything was fine. Class E dungeon, type, extermination for 10 or more people. The instructor said he would go with the B team. The instructor gave the command for the students to enter the portal. The young men found themselves in a dungeon. Everyone drew their weapons and looked around. They took up a circular defense. The instructor noted that everyone reacted instantly. Plus 1 point for student Jong-do because he was the fastest to react. Jong-do stated that the security check after entering the dungeon is complete. They should stick to the square formation as it was stated in the manual. Since this is a dungeon-type dungeon, extermination. The instructor thought that student Jong-do stood out in several ways. His enthusiasm and determination are stronger than anyone else's. The instructor regretfully thought that the young man had terrible talents. If he had more talents, he could have become an S-class hunter or higher. Jong Do announced that he had an orc right in his sights. The orc roared and moved to attack. Jong Do shouted for Haeshik to use his shield. The orc shouldn't give him any trouble. The orc struck the young man with his fist. He managed to put up his shield. Support was already rushing to Haeshik's side. Already 2 people were fighting back, defending themselves with shields. The disciples tried to attack the green monster. Jong Do was the 3rd attacker. He jumped high up and swung his halberd to deliver a staggering blow. The monster was defeated. The monster fell to the floor and blood spurted from its wounds. The young men had done their job. In the neighboring hall, behind closed doors, it was visible that someone was there. A check had to be made. In that hall, there was a monster boss sitting on a throne. Jong Do apologized to Haeshik and said that he had miscalculated. Haeshik said he shouldn't have. That monster was much stronger than it looked. The instructor thought it was strange. Student Kang Haeshik should have been able to easily block an orc's attack in a Class E dungeon. Could it be that this dungeon was on the border between E and D? The instructor decided that he should be prepared in case the situation got worse. Someone shouted that the orcs were attacking. Indeed, the orcs appeared and were coming to attack. Jong Do commanded the archers to get ready. Jong Do said for Haeshik to block the enemy's attack. Haeshik put his shield forward. Haeshik swept the orc with his shield, lifting him into the air and toppling him to the ground. The young men bent over the unarmed orc. The green monster was breathing heavily. The warriors, 3-on-1, swooped down on the orc and stabbed the monster with their swords. The instructor looked at the students' teamwork and thought he had imagined it. Haeshik felt confident. At the same time, outside the dungeon, events were developing in a different way. It seemed to the young men that something had happened. The instructor took the clipboard from the student and checked what was going on in the dungeon. The instructor asked which seeker he got the information about this dungeon from. The young man replied that he was not very familiar with this seeker. He had been recommended to him by another guild. The instructor told the young man to recognize the name of that guild. He doesn't even realize what he has done. The young man replied that the guild was called Karma. He himself couldn't find the dungeon no matter how hard he tried. The students, looking at the instructor, couldn't understand what was wrong, but they realized they were in trouble. The man threw this informant to the ground with anger. The instructor apologized and said, "Looks like they got cheated with this dungeon." The frightened students came closer in order to find out what had happened. Someone had heard that. There were seekers who could falsify information about the dungeon with their mana. The instructor didn't think that they could encounter such a situation. Soyun was frightened in that case. What kind of dungeon is this really? In the dungeon, the young men finally reached the room with the boss monster. All that remained was to unlock the door. The warriors piled on the doors with the intent of swinging them open. Jong Do felt a frightening aura outside the door. He hadn't felt such an aura even with a D-class dungeon lizard. The door opened and the whole group decided to go inside. The young men were terribly surprised. They did not expect to see such a monster of a boss. The monster boss stared intently at the squad that had entered. His gaze spoke volumes. The young men choked. For the first few seconds, the instructor felt as if he had water in his mouth. He couldn't say a word. Upon regaining consciousness, the young man yelled that there was an emergency. They immediately stopped the test and returned. The instructor said that the class of this dungeon was not E. The monster jumped up from his seat and rushed toward the squad of humans. The monster was horrible. His eyes burned with hatred. It swung its axe and roared loudly. This was a Class A dungeon. The portal outside was cordoned off and no one was allowed to get close. There were guards around the perimeter. A special agent appeared and asked where the perpetrator was. The instructor said he fainted, and he's in shock now. The girl, a special agent, said that as soon as this young man came to his senses, he should be taken into custody immediately. She told her colleague to contact the Karma Guild, and she wanted information regarding the guild's rally point. This girl was the group leader of the S-Ranked Players Association, SEO Sang-hee. The girl was outraged. How dare they give such a scumbag a job in the guild? How could the dungeon type be mixed up? Not to mention that it's a rank A dungeon. A colleague said that Kim Soon-tae, a top B rank instructor, accompanied this group. The dungeon had a boss type, not a sweep type. A dungeon with a rank A boss type is equivalent to, or even higher than, a rank S sweep type dungeon. The girl thought that the rank B players were already dead. There was no way to save them. Ms. Soyun refused to believe it. She hoped the young men would survive. The girl inquired if there was any way to save the people who were now in the dungeon. Sang-hee said that she didn't know that way. They can't get there yet. The girl added, all they can do now is avenge those who are there unfortunate enough to die. In the dungeon, Jung-do stood one-on-one against the boss monster. The young man had no other choice. The instructor shouted that he was using hypnosis slings and sent special putas to put them around the green orc. The orc found himself deactivated for a while. He was bound hand and foot by this hypnosis. The instructor said that from now on he would be the leader of the hike, and everyone must obey him. The young man told everyone to calm down and follow his instructions. The instructor said that he has managed to control this orc so far. The warriors should deal as much damage to the monster as possible during this time. The orc tensed up and began to tear those bonds. Everyone was very frightened. The young people thought they were finished. The instructor also noticed that the orc was starting to break free. If this continues, everyone here could die. The monster boss glared with his eyes and showed with his entire appearance that he was ready to destroy the opponents. The instructor got into a one-on-one confrontation against this orc. Jung-do came to his rescue. He jumped up high and damaged his opponent with his sword. The angry orc screamed loudly. He had lost some of his spikes sticking out from behind his back. Everyone noticed the sword in Jung-do's hands. Someone said, Hyung-nim. 10 minutes before, the entire group had stood in indecision, staring at the orc who had broken the bonds of hypnosis. Jung-do thought that even that was useless against him. The young man decided that reinforcements were needed. An old friend appeared in front of the young man and asked how Jung-do was doing. The emperor asked if it was a monster. Jung-do replied that the situation was very complicated, and he would explain everything later. The young man told Liu Shan that he believed they would win. Liu Shan said that he can't fight, and it is unclear what the young man believes. Jung-do activated the merge. He had to do something urgently. The guy wondered if it would be possible to get the information when downloading. He should use merge. The young man was told that he had used the fusion 10 times already. Liu Shan said that the boy was using his favor very well. Suddenly, a pillar of light struck the ground from above, and Jung-do saw the coveted map. The boy shouted that this was it, the diamond map. At the same moment, the young man had a huge sword. Jung-do used the sword to strike the green monster with a devastating blow. The instructor was amazed. How could the trainee achieve such a result? Jung-do said that he was just very lucky. The young man changed his status. Level 99. Siegfried was the hero of Germanic mythology. Jung-do didn't expect it to be a dragon hunter, the man who managed to slay the dragon from the Scandinavian epic. The orc shook off the crushing blow and came to his senses. He was ready to continue the fight. Jung-do was surprised that the green monster was still alive. Come to think of it, even Cho Hakre wouldn't have been able to do significant damage to it. The young man wondered what level his opponent had. The boy received information that the orc had a level of 82. The young man was very alarmed. It turns out that this orc is at the peak of the S rank. Jung-do decided to take the fight. The orc moved to attack. He swung his huge axe. Jung-do dodged his opponent's attack. He swung his deadly sword and prepared to counterattack the green monster. The young man struck his opponent's axe with all his might. Sparks flew in different directions. The boy thought to himself as he was facing an opponent with a measly S rank. The young man said he was very interested to see how long the orc could last against SS rank skills. The orc was having a hard time. He was taking damage. The green monster lost one eye. The orc screamed in pain. The young man dodged, and the orc made a deep hole in the floor with his powerful axe. Jung-do struck his opponent's body with his sword several times. The orc continued to scream even louder with rage and despair. Jung-do, from a safe distance, asked, "Is this really all his opponent can do?" The orc, burning with anger, screamed and launched a reckless attack. The young man met his opponent with his deadly sword. The young man thrust his sword forward and said that it was time to end this battle. Jung-do rushed forward and thrust his sword forward. He was going to strike the orc and pierce through his body. Everything went according to the right script. The young man jumped up and his sword slashed through the green body of the monster like butter. The orc screamed and fell to the ground. The Scandinavian king told the young man that it was a great job. He congratulated him on his brilliant victory. The young man replied that it was all thanks to him. The students ran up to the young man and thanked him. They said that if it wasn't for him and the instructor, they would probably be dead by now. Jung-do said the most important thing was that they were all alive. The instructor said with admiration that Jung-do, well done. He has a lot of questions, but they have to get out of here first. Suddenly the orc hissed. He pulled his hand towards Jung-do. Heshik yelled for Jung-do to be careful, and be more careful. Heshik managed to set up his shield, which took the brunt of the impact. The monster tossed the young man away, and Heshik flew off to the side. The shield fell out of his hands. Jung-do shouted and jumped over the monster and swung his sword. The young man saw that this monster had blocked his strike. How could this be? Jung-do asked the instructor. Was this some kind of skill of an orc? The instructor said that an orc lord is basically a monster that uses a melee attack, shooting down with its scream. This orc should have no such skills. The instructor said that he had one guess. With a very low probability, the dying monster could use the new skill. This skill is called Mutant Anger. All the young men froze in place. They realized they couldn't move. The instructor said that this, the orc executioner, Jung-do activated the skill, Endurance. However, he noticed that this orc had become significantly faster. The orc decided to strike the young man from above with his powerful fist. Jung-do had time to put his sword up to block the blow. The young man held back the monster's onslaught. The Scandinavian king told the young man he thinks it's because of the dragon blood awakening skill, which he has. The Scandinavian king said that this is a power he gained after defeating the evil dragon Fafnir. This skill restores all of the player's wounds, reflects attacks, and temporarily increases stats when health decreases. Jung-do remarked that this was a terrifying skill. The king warned the young man that the danger was behind him. The monster tried to hit the young man with his fist. Jung-do had time to turn around and block the blow with his sword. During the battle, the king told the young man that his time was at hand. The young man asked, why now? He needed support more than ever. Jung-do realized that without the king, it would be difficult for him to fight this monster. The young man lowered his sword. Jung-do noticed that it was the sword that suddenly grew heavier. The expression on his face changed. There was no need to show any sign. The youngster thought that the evil monster had noticed that she was weak. Our hero knew there was nowhere to go for support. The other players were immobilized. Jung-do has run out of mana. He can't use Siegfried anymore. The evil orc was getting closer. Jung-do didn't know what to do. The monster's hand reached for the young man. Its huge palm was already over the young man's head. Jung-do thought, is he really going to die like this? He had just become the hero he wanted to be. The young man remembered that he had promised So-young to come back. The boy decided that he wouldn't die. Jung-do raised his head and looked into the giant beast's eyes. The young man firmly grabbed his sword with both hands and swung. Jung-do shouted that he wouldn't die. Jung-do shouted that he wouldn't die, and with all his strength, he attacked his opponent. The strike was as sharp as lightning. All the energy and hatred was put into this magic sword. The huge beast, confident in its victory, didn't even do anything to defend itself. A young man received a report that he had managed to perfectly reproduce an ancient weapon. Man Benjivan. The full power of the ancient weapon was unleashed. The young man was able to create Balmont, the Dragon Slayer's sword. Balmont, it was Siegfried's sword. Now the young man could see streams of the enemy's blood. The player's talents were boosted by 1000% during the Dragon Blood Awakening action. Siegfried's sword passed through the green orc's body. The beast didn't even realize what had happened. This sword restored not only the health index, but also skills. The hero's muscle power increased by 5 units. 3 mana was added. Jung-do thought that the dwarves had put their skills to work here as well. The young man received a prize of extremely high quality. His scores have been upgraded. Jung-do's skill, Blue Dragon Spear, appeared. You could only upgrade your skill level with a gold card. The young man realized that meant a skill could also be obtained from the diamond card. Anyway, he now has Dragon Blood Awakening. It's a perfect skill. It's like having another extra life. Jung-do told his friends that now we have to get out of here. The young man looked at his motionless comrades. They had regained their mobility. Jung-do asked, what's with their facial expressions? How is Heshik feeling? Is he okay? One of the warriors asked if the young man would destroy them. After all, he is actually a ranker who was hiding his identity. Isn't he going to destroy everyone to shut their mouths? Jung-do said that the young man is wrong. He's not going to destroy innocent people. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They realized they were saved. The young man shouted that he wasn't a ranker at all who was hiding his level. He was only level 2 before going down to the dungeon. The instructor asked, "Then why was Jung-do so strong?" The young man thought that he shouldn't talk about himself right now. Jung-do replied that it's just that his first skill is a bit unusual, but he can't say what kind of skill it is. Heshik said that if that was the case, he could become as strong as Jung-do by getting his first skill. Our hero said that anything is possible. Outside, the portal was still cordoned off. Everyone was worried. It had been a long time. If a squad is scared and hides without clearing the dungeon, monsters may come out of the dungeon after 30 days. The young man asked, "Shouldn't the dungeon closing system be used now?" The girl replied that it wouldn't happen as long as Sunta was there. The inspector added that he always fulfills his duties. Obviously, he wouldn't have challenged the dungeon if he knew he couldn't handle it. Everyone noticed that there was some commotion going on in the portal. Everyone grabbed their weapons. The girl shouted for everyone to get ready to enter the dungeon and avenge the squad. The next moment, the squad emerged from the portal in one piece. They were tired, but satisfied. The instructor reported that the dungeon had been cleared, and he announced the end of the exam. Everyone had done well. The girl wondered what he was talking about, and so calmly. The instructor looked around and only now saw the girl. There was surprise on her face. The instructor asked what Seo Sang-hee was doing here. The girl asked what happened to the dungeon. Seo Sang-hee couldn't calm down. How were they able to defeat an A-rank boss? The girl saw the trophy. It was an Orc Lord's battle axe. How did they get it? Sang-hee examined the axe and said it was a rare item that hadn't appeared in the country in 10 years. How did they get it? Sang-hee asked the instructor. Really? Had he defeated the Orc Lord? The Academy representative Kim Min-jae clapped his hands and said that Sunte, it was the Academy's pride. Since the instructor is an Academy graduate, so of course it would be right for the Academy to take this booty. Sang-hee said that the instructor wasn't hiding in the back looking around. He had cleared the dungeon so he would take the loot. The Academy representative held out his hand and said he would handle the shipment of the axe. Jung-do stopped the man and said it was his trophy, and he'll keep it for himself. The man wondered, what is the student talking about? This should belong to the Academy. Jung-do disagreed. After all, he was the one who defeated the orc. Therefore, we should show respect. Jung-do said that he is not a subordinate of the man. The man said he is a member of the Academy, and he's a student of the Academy. Is it really necessary for him to claim it? The Academy representative wondered why students should lie. The instructor said that the young man was telling the truth. He had indeed defeated the orcs single-handedly. The Academy representative thought he was being deceived. It is impossible for an apprentice to take on an orc lord alone. Jung-do replied that there was absolutely no common sense in the dungeons. The young man added, "Isn't that what they teach at the Academy? Shouldn't the Academy representative's first priority be to take care of the students rather than his own profit? At the very least, the reason should be found out and some measures should be taken." The Academy representative was frightened and said, "After all, everyone came back safe and sound." The girl covered her face with her hands. She wondered if she looked the same in other people's eyes. She was ashamed. Sang-hee said that the state of emergency is lifted from now on. First, we should send all the students to the hospital. The students were exposed to the roaring orcs. There's a risk of internal injuries. Therefore, they need to be checked thoroughly. The Academy representative said that he was in charge here and everyone should obey him. At the hospital, the instructor told Sang-hee that the young man had defeated the Orc Lord. However, afterward, the orc emitted red energy from his body and also fully recovered, and looked much stronger than before. After that, Jung-do chopped him immediately into 2 pieces with a single blow. The instructor said it was only his guess, but it seemed to him that Jung-do had a spear at the beginning of the journey to the dungeon. However, when confronted by the Orc Lord, he replaced his weapon with a large sword with a blue gemstone inlaid into the golden guard. When the Orc Lord was cut in half, the blue gem glowed. After that, the shape of the sword seemed to disappear. The instructor said, he believes that Jung-do's student probably used artifacts. Sang-hee wondered, an artifact that could destroy an Orc Lord with a single blow? Did he really have the skills or abilities to create artifacts? Sang-hee thought it was a skill close to the rank of SS White Smith from the United States. The girl said that in that case, they should hurry, and pulled the instructor behind her. The young man asked fearfully, "What's wrong?" Jong-do, sitting on the hospital bed, checked his status. The young man saw that this trek had taken him to a new level. It was hard to defeat an S-class boss. Jong-do was surprised that he didn't get any attack skills for some reason. To level up effectively, he needs to get through more dungeons as quickly as possible. Even if he uses the info lottery, there's no guarantee that information about the dungeon will appear. He has to find the dungeon himself somehow. There was a knock on the door. Sang-hee was on the other side. She asked for permission to enter. The girl asked how the young man was feeling. Jong-do replied that luckily he didn't have any serious injuries. He's feeling better now, so he's ready to be discharged tomorrow. The girl said she was ready to introduce herself officially. She is the team leader in charge of this case in the Players Association. The guy said it was nice to meet you and gave his name. Sang-hee said that the academy broker was tricked. The seeker who made the deal is currently missing and is believed to be affiliated with the Karma Guild. But it is possible that this incident will be covered up. The young man asked why the guild would do this. Sang-hee said that there's been some discord between the academy and the guild lately. Perhaps this is their way of getting revenge. The young man exhaled. He was relieved because he had decided it wasn't because of him. The guy said it's weird. He's not a member of the academy, and wiping out a few students wouldn't hurt the academy's reputation. The instructor said they weren't targeting students. Because the head of the academy, his father. Jong-do looked at the instructor and thought that this guy was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. The instructor admitted that it was the academy's fault anyway. Young added that representative, Kim Min, will be fired and compensated as an apology. Jong-do said that players should always be prepared for unexpected situations. Now that he has received an apology and compensation, he can safely forget about it. The girl decided to formally address the young man and called him by his first name. Sang-hee asked if he would like to work for the good of the country. The young man said no. Sang-hee suggested that he listen to her until the end. Jong-do replied that he wasn't interested. Jong-do knew that when one became a player in the service of the state, one must first work in the state for 3 years. That is, one must become a slave who belongs to the state. It was a shame for Jong-do to admit, but they were the last generation to serve in the military just before the disaster. The young man didn't want to be re-enlisted as a player. Sang-hee said there's a misunderstanding. Compulsory labor is what the government requires for exemption from additional expenses. Since the young man has already paid this amount, he does not need to do this compulsory labor. Working for the state gives a great advantage. The young man will be able to use the player's state transportation. Also, one can keep getting free dungeons that will match his level. And there will be almost no taxes. Sang-hee said that in return, he had to defend the dungeon 4 times a month, which the headquarters would designate, and return 70% of the spoils to the state. Jong-do, hearing this, said he had changed his mind. Jong-do, of course, didn't know what information would fall out of the info lottery, but he doesn't want to belong to any organization. Although the probability of the lottery being lucky isn't 0, so he won't be missing out. Sang-hee asked, in that case, could the young man accept the sweep request? As the number of dungeons grows around the world, players are becoming in short supply. Therefore, the association is requesting a sweep of dungeons that no one owns. By doing so, they also support player development. Therefore, all dungeon purchase costs are fully reimbursed. Also, the young man will have to pay 30% of the magic stone he will obtain upon completion of the sweep. But if he didn't like the assigned dungeon, he could always decline it. Jong-do thought that all of this was not bad. The guy thought, since the dungeon search is handled by the association, he would always have a place to farm. Even if one paid 30% of the magic stone, the stone from a low-ranked dungeon would be worth much less than the loot from it. Jong-do said he accepts the association's offer. He is ready to sign the contract. Sang-hee said that's just fine. The association will find the young man a suitable dungeon and contact him. All he has to do is come to the headquarters and sign the contract. Jong-do said that when he was discharged, he should return to the academy, right? The instructor replied that the young man had gone through all the mandatory training. So, he can stay wherever he wants. The instructor added that the young man should definitely attend the graduation. Sang-hee said she had one more request for the young man. The girl asked if the young man would like to sell his battle axe, and if it was possible, she would like to buy it in installments. The young man agreed. Sang-hee had the battle axe. Jong-do signed the papers. The young man saw the tenderness with which the girl looked at that axe. She said that she did not want to part with this little one for a second. Jong-do said, He was very happy that the axe had found a good owner. Sang-hee said she was looking forward to the young man's trip to the dungeon. The trek would take place in 2 days. The contract for the dungeon was signed. The girl offered to look at the young man's association. She was sure the young man would like it. The young man stepped over the threshold and saw the training hall of the association he had heard so much about. Sang-hee led the young man across the room. Everyone noted that the group leader had brought a newcomer, and the girl had a new weapon. Everyone was busy doing something. The girl said that this is what they do every day. Jung-do was impressed. Sang-hee told the young people if they wanted to go on the expedition and not be a burden, they should work harder. The young men looked at the girl and said she was the group leader. She is, as always, with crazy charisma and radiant beauty. The young men watched Jung-do with interest. Who could that person be? One of the young men approached Sang-hee and bowed to the leader. The girl said hello in return. Sang-hee introduced her companion. She said that he was the man who defeated the Orc Lord during the campaign. Jung-do extended his hand and said it was nice to meet him. The young man shook his hand and said his name in response. Sang-hee said since the young man came here on association business, she's giving him a tour of the headquarters. He's a very important guest, so he should be treated with respect. The young man offered Jung-do to work out one game with him. If, anyway, the young man was already in the gym. Sang-hee showed the young man her fist and said she warned him not to be rude to the guest. The young man asked, "Isn't fist fighting the fastest way to get to know a person?" Jung-do thought that this young man wanted to show that he was stronger than him. He didn't want to give in to the provocation. Jung-do replied that he wasn't interested in child's play. He's here to inspect the association. Han Sang-hyuk smirked and said that this upstart still dares to call himself a man. Jung-do stopped and looked around. His eyes sparkled, and he said that he was ready to fight. Sang-hee said that the guest doesn't have to prove anything at all. He's a C grade, and he was just released from the hospital. Jung-do said he's fine. Jung-do added that he was just hired by the association. Therefore, they have the right to evaluate him. He decided to take this chance and prove himself. Sang-hee thought that Jung-do had defeated the Orc Lord thanks to the artifacts. But now his physical condition left much to be desired. He would never be able to defeat this opponent with his skills alone. Jung-do sat down in his chair and put on his virtual glasses. Sure, the game was different from reality. But if it was a battle simulation, then it was a different story. The young man activated his skill. Game. During this game, all talents increased by 100%. The young man appeared to be armed with a spear. His opponent apologized for saying rude words earlier. He would like to believe that his opponent would turn a blind eye to it. Jung-do noticed that his opponent had 2 swords. A bad memory immediately came over him. Han Sang-hyuk said that he now wanted to gain experience from the Orc Lord Destroyer. If that fails, then he can boast his strength period to the group leader. Either way, it's all to his advantage. Sang-hek pounced on our hero, swinging his swords. The young man blocked his blows with his spear. His opponent shouted that his speed was unrivaled. But at the same moment, he was pierced through and through by the spear. A huge hole appeared in his body. Jung-do took off his virtual glasses, put them on his chair, and quietly walked away. The game was over. The opponent was discouraged. He hadn't expected to be defeated so quickly. Jung-do asked the girl to finish the academy tour for today. He had an idea. The girl offered to walk him out. Jung-do said he'd get there on his own. Sang-hee thought that the upstart who lost was a real jerk. Why did he offer to play? Outside the academy, Jung-do thought, why did he fall for the provocation? After all, he still had a long way to go. Since passing the final exam, the young man's mana had become 23. Since he only had 20 mana left, he could use the binding lottery skill twice, but unfortunately, it wasn't guaranteed. If he had 1 more mana, he would have been able to use the binding lottery skill and summon Liu Shan. But right now, it was silly to think about it. The young man knew he still had 10 more guaranteed lottery attempts, but he'd rather try to use the binder instead. One must strive to amplify one's talents. Besides, the young man was already used to the fact that he was always unlucky in this lottery. Another hero appeared in front of the young man and said that he was Yons from the Chromal Kingdom. Jung-do wondered if such a kingdom even existed. Chromal? Jung-do asked his interlocutor when he was born. Yonsei said that he would think about it now. And he replied that it was in the year 5728 from Cristania. Jan said that Christiania is the goddess they believe in. The young man realized that this hero was from another world. That is, it is possible to contact not only beings on Earth, but also beyond it. In the case of a great wizard and fantasy heroes such as a sword master can also be downloaded. You can upload the superhumans of another world. Perhaps they know the reason for the phenomenon of dungeon creation occurring on Earth. Jong-do decided that this was useful information for him. He had one last attempt left. The young man hoped that this time too would be very useful news. Unfortunately, the young man was disappointed. He thought there was something wrong with his luck. The emperor asked why the young man was upset. Jong-do thought that this was not a guaranteed lottery, but a binding lottery. Why did Liu Shan show up here? The guy started tearing the hair on his head. He couldn't believe it. Could it be that out of all these cards, he had pulled Liu Shan out again? The young man shouted that he already had Liu Shan. He had already spent 6 mana on him. Jong-do shouted, "Is there a bigger loser in the world than him?" The emperor said he could see that the young man was very upset. It is in vain. The young man read the information that he had managed to summon the very first character again. Liu Shan's strength strengthened. The emperor shouted loudly. The young man brought a skill, choosing combinations, as a reward. The guy inquired about the improvements. Liu Shan's performance had indeed improved. He knew that the lottery skill defied logic, but to do so much. Jong-do said that after reinforcement, the personality skill also improves. Although his skill is still not very good, it probably can't be fixed with a simple enhancement. With each improvement, performance will increase exponentially. He would eagerly wait for his skill level to increase. Jong-do thought, what if that was the limit? That would upset him. The emperor asked if the young man was really saying that about him. The young man said that they were just his thoughts out loud. There was no need to pay attention to them. Liu Shan shouted his luck, one of the most useful skills. It could be considered that the young man was very lucky to have him. Jong-do replied that great luck was certainly a good thing. But in terms of the scale of skills he could have been given by other spirits from different worlds of the true universe, then luck is not the best thing he could have gotten. Why did Liu Shan fall out of all the characters again? The emperor said that perhaps it was because of the bond between him and the master. After all, he is his first identity. The deeper their bond, the higher the chance of him appearing. The young man thought that every time he used the info lottery, he saw the cards around him. And there were 12 personalities. Except for one, all the others were earthlings. The young man thought, what could that mean? Liu Shan said that now they will see each other much more often. Jong-do said that the emperor should show up when he is called. The young man agreed that there was nothing to object to the emperor, even if he pissed him off. Jong-do decided to test the skills he couldn't try out earlier. Each of his characteristics increased by 10 points. Due to Liu Shan's improvement, not only his characteristics increased, but also the characteristics of the young man. Jong-do said that he was taking it back. The young man decided to play the lottery again. He thought he would never get used to it. You can only use 2 personalities that are already in the skill album. This is a guaranteed linking lottery. Only personalities from the same era can be loaded. The guy thought, if he put it together, Liu Bu and Liu Shan, Liu Bei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, you can knock out all the great figures from the same era. And if you open the scrapbook and move all heroes to this album, then when you choose a combination, the mana consumption will be 40. The first choice of combination required more mana. The young man realized that he needed to be patient, in case he didn't need them yet. Jong-do, pointing his finger, realized that not all combinations were possible. The young man realized the point. The point of combining was to narrow down the area to create new personalities. If he combined Liu Shan and Liu Bu as he had wanted from the beginning, he would be able to knock out a character from the 3 Kingdoms period. Finally, the day came when the association gave the young man a dungeon, all according to the signed contract. The person in charge said 1 person, Class E, type sweep. Is the young man ready to enter? Jong-do asked, waiting for a while. The young man remembered how he had been tricked with a dungeon recently, so it would be a good idea to check it out for himself. The boy turned on the exploration mode. Information has surfaced that this is a goblin lair. 1 man, Class E type, sweep. The young man also managed to get some hidden information. There was a mana stone buried underneath the boss's room. Jong-do was glad that he could even find out such a thing. The officer on duty asked the young man if something was wrong. Jong-do waved his hand and said he was fine. Jongdo thought that being able to know the types of dungeon monsters in advance would be an incredible strategic advantage. Not to mention knowing about the hidden rewards. The young man said he was going in. The duty officer noted the time he crossed the portal and said the young man could go through, and wished him good luck. Jongdo looked around once he was in the dungeon. He didn't have to be alone for long. From nowhere, small, angry goblins appeared. They waved their weapons and rushed at the young man. Jongdo used his halberd and destroyed the enemies. The young man skillfully wielded his deadly weapon. Every swing of his halberd reached its target. The goblins tried to surround the young man. Jongdo took it to the next level. He thought that he might cry now because of the thoughts of what he had experienced in the past dungeons. It was different now. These goblins must find out who was in charge here. Jongdo got excited. He was destroying everything living and green moving around him. The goblins had no chance of escape. The young man went one level up again. He laughed into his opponent's eyes. The goblins decided not to mess with this warrior and began to scatter in fear. Jongdo laughed and said that they wouldn't get far. The young man thought that this was happiness. Suddenly, the hobgoblin boss appeared. He roared loudly. The smaller goblins began to hide behind his legs. Jongdo dealt with that monster too. He stabbed it through and made a huge hole in the monster's body. The young man thought that even though he was a C grade, he didn't expect to be able to defeat an E grade boss with a single blow. A pickaxe appeared in the young man's hands. He thought, where is he going to dig now? The young man hit the ground not far from the monster boss with his pickaxe and decided it had to be around here somewhere. After a short work with the pickaxe, the young man found what he was looking for. It was mana crystals. The young man left the dungeon and went through the portal to the surface. There was surprise in the eyes of the duty officer. The attendant told the young man that it had not been 2 hours and he was back. The young man replied that he was just lucky this time. Jongdo asked if there were any other dungeons nearby. The duty officer thought that it wasn't hard for this young man to do this kind of work in a dungeon. The duty officer said there were no more dungeons controlled by the association nearby. The man said if the young man wanted to go further into the dungeon, he could look for commands in the Mananet. It is said that the number of dungeons has increased dramatically recently, and members from different guilds have decided to gather in teams for effective mopping up. To register, you only need to enter the serial number of your watch. However, the young man could not find any bands nearby. The young man found the information he needed. Did they really not care about rank? Maybe they have enough hunters as it is and are just looking for a porter? Jongdo decided to call. When he got through, he said that he had come across an ad for a hunter and decided to give it a try. The young man was told that they had already found the man. The call turned out to be a waste of time. The clerk on duty, seeing Jongdo's disgruntled face, assumed that things hadn't gone as smoothly as the young man had hoped. Jongdo said that the place was already taken. He added that he's probably done for the day and will now go get his award. The young man was given the mana crystals he had gotten from the monsters. Jongdo was happy. After all, he found that big guy in the boss's room. He got a lot of crystals this time. Jongdo told the duty officer that according to the contract, he could take anything that wasn't mana crystals dropped from monsters. And this stone is just as different from the ones from the monsters. The officer on duty said the young man was right. He has a lot of experience and luck. Finding such trophies in a rank E dungeon was rare. The young man thought that it was all thanks to his skill, exploration. Jongdo was doing hand-to-hand combat training at the association's gym. After working for a few hours, he decided that he had enough for today. As he walked by, Jongdo noticed that everyone was looking at the TV. The news was on the screen. There was a report that monsters broke out of a dungeon outside the city today. Fortunately, no civilians were injured, thanks to the association's hunters who arrived in time. One hunter nearby died fighting the monsters. Everyone present wondered, how could he have died? Had he not heard the evacuation message? Someone noticed that there was no evacuation message this time. It seems that the public address system had failed again. The young man thought he had been in this place not long ago. But if monsters had broken out of the dungeon, then the mana emanating from the dungeon should have peaked. Why didn't he feel it? He should have noticed it if he was nearby. Could this really be the same dungeon from the recruitment ad? The boy dismissed the thought. Who in their right mind would recruit hunters to clean up a dungeon on the verge of breaking? The young man was again at the old place, not far from his home. He was checking the information. He decided it was time to call it a day. Liu Shan told the young man that they would meet next time. After all, they had much more reason to meet now. The general asked if the young man was going to spin the info lottery. The boy replied that he didn't have much mana left after going to the dungeons. He would spin until he had 10 mana left, and then he'll use the link lottery. Chengdo said that he was counting on Mr. Liu Shan. Liu Shan said that the young man can rely on him. All attempts were unsuccessful. The general was upset. The young man told Liu Shan not to worry. He knows that good luck is not enough to beat this silly game. Chengdu thought that maybe his luck was so terrible that it negated Mr. Liu Shan's good luck. The lottery machine spat out an ominous capsule. Liu Shan and Chengdu tensed up. This was something they had never encountered before. The young man received for the first time extremely important information. The rewards of his info lottery will be improved. The young man will be able to narrow down the information to a specific topic. The young man and the emperor stared intently at the capsule breaking apart. What should they wait for now? Zhongdo received information that in 4 days there would be an artificial dungeon rift at a certain location. Zhongdo was at a loss. What does artificial rift mean? Could it be that someone could accelerate the rift process? Zhongdo remembered the morning incident he heard about on TV and realized that it was for a reason. The young man said that's why he couldn't feel the signs of the rift, even though he was nearby. That's why there was no signal from the warning system. If someone artificially created the rift, then everything falls into place. Is such a conspiracy really possible? The young man was sure that the person he was talking to on the phone was the perpetrator, and the request was immediately deleted after his call, which didn't even last a minute. There's something fishy going on here. Zhongdo was at a loss. He didn't know what he should do now. Liu Shan stated that he had to go. The young man thought that there was a high chance that he would die if he tried to stop the rift on his own, and he would simply become an information machine. The guy realized that he couldn't tell anyone about it until he was strong enough to defend himself. He decided to discreetly hint about it to the head of Seo Sanghi. The young man had received another extremely important piece of information. He thought he had enough important information for today. If history changes, he will lose the ability to get information about the future from the info lottery. The damage caused by the dungeon rift must be prevented. If successful, the young man will receive a reward from the true universe. A young man must take part in a quest. Improving skills. Choosing a combination. And now the quest. The boy remembered the moment when he first met Winry and received his skills. He couldn't understand then why she had appeared before him and handed over something so valuable. Now at last, the young man understood everything. The universe can only communicate with him, and it wants to prevent history from changing in a disastrous way. Zhongdo said, "It looks like they need each other." He decided that he would do it. The next day came. A portal appeared in a certain place. From that portal, monsters began to appear. At the association's meeting, the rapporteur said that there were 2 dungeons with a gap of 1 day. Both dungeons were not publicized. Accordingly, no one reported them to the association. All these problems appeared because of unwillingness to pay taxes. The head of the Hunters Association said that unless he is mistaken, there were no hunters in the vicinity prior to the incident. The rupture didn't happen somewhere in the mountains, but in the center of town. Sang-hee reported as the boss ordered. They checked all the hunters who were near the scene, but none of them felt any signs of rupture. The head of the association said, he doesn't understand what Sang-hee is getting at. Does she mean to say that the breakup happened in a dungeon whose time has not yet come to an end? Sang-hee said, that's exactly what she means. Everyone present was disturbed by what the girl voiced. This should not continue. The head of the association said it was impossible. Has the structure of the dungeons changed? Sang-hee said, she assumes the likelihood of that is extremely low. It was extremely difficult to examine these bodies because of the damage caused by the monsters. It was confirmed that the hunters were killed by a sword thrust to the chest area. The head of the association said that these murders took place near the scene. That's very suspicious. What conclusion did the girl come to? The field team concluded that there was a way to artificially create a dungeon rupture. After the report, Sang-hee sighed. They still didn't know the identity of the culprit and his motives, so they can't reveal the real reason for the breakup. The only thing they could do was to increase patrols and keep the civilians under surveillance. The girl thought it was terrible to go home without any results. It would be better if the dungeon was cleaned up. Sang-hee thought it might be worth assigning the dungeon sweep to Mr. Zhang Do. The girl was confident that the young man could definitely handle it. At the academy, at the graduation ceremony, the speaker said that student Jung-do was an example to everyone else. He graduated with the highest grade in their class. The young man was given a certificate for outstanding service. The young man wanted to finish all this quickly. He was completely out of time. He had to participate in a quest to prevent the damage caused by the dungeon rift. But he couldn't miss this event since he had been promised a refund on his tuition. Instructor Suntae said he has high hopes for Mr. Jong-do. The young men shook hands. They were happy about this cooperation. The young man was called out. He looked back. It was Soyun. The girl said that she heartily congratulated the young man on his graduation. The young lady handed something to the young man. She put it in the palm of his hand. The young man asked, "What is it?" Soyun said it was a lucky amulet she made herself. The girl said she recently saw Jeon-do being very upset about his bad luck. Soyun said that she spoke this charm for good luck. Therefore, she was sure that something good would happen to the boy. Jung-do thanked the girl and said that he would treasure it. So-young replied that she was very happy that the young man liked it. The girl wondered what the young man would be doing now. Jung-do said that he decided to think about it while he was running around the dungeons. So-young wondered if Jung-do would like to team up with her in that case. Haeshik appeared on the horizon at the wrong time and called out to the young man. Soyun stepped aside. She was angry at Haeshik and ready to take him down. He always got in the way of her talking to Jung-do alone. The young people exchanged pleasantries and asked how each other were doing. Haeshik suggested to his interlocutor to go to a dungeon. He was able to book one rank E dungeon. Jung-do apologized and said that he was a little busy. He offered to spend some time together some other time. Soyun was very upset. Haeshik said it would be good to at least practice together. So-young was ready to tear Haeshik apart. Jung-do looked around and thought that these two might be able to help him. Jung-do knew he couldn't put his friends in danger. On the horizon, Haeshik was quickly moving away from So-young, running after him. He didn't realize what he had done. Jung-do told himself that he would stop this breakup with his own strength. 2 days passed. The young man urgently arrived at his destination. The rapid movement made his breath hitched. However, there was no portal to the dungeon at this location. Jung-do couldn't understand why the dungeon information was so inaccurate this time. He almost died while looking for each dungeon. However, thanks to the roadblocks near the dungeons, everything was avoided. He could find dungeons wherever there were no civilians. As a result, the young man noted for himself that there were 3 dungeons in this region. A rank A dungeon on the road near Sansu Bridge. It was a cobalt fortress. Mission type, defense. A rank C dungeon that opened in a neighboring area. A nest of tarantulas. Type, sweep. And finally, a rank D dungeon opened up in another area. Wolf's Lair. Type, sweep. The best way to prevent a rupture is to go to the dungeon and mop it up. But the A and C rank dungeons have already been bought by the guilds. The D rank dungeon belongs to the association. Therefore, he couldn't go anywhere. A rank A dungeon type, it's a defense. The young man began to analyze. Jung-do understood what it meant. This means that a huge number of monsters will come out in a very short period of time. If a rupture of such a dungeon were to occur in the center of the city, it could end very badly. The phone rang. It was Seo Sang-hee calling. A young man answered. Sang-hee said hello and said that she would like the young man to help with the dungeons. John-do agreed and said that he should be assigned a dungeon in Gangnam-gu. Sang-hee replied that there was a D-rank dungeon in that area. The girl wondered if such a dungeon would suit the young man. John-do said he wants to go to a dungeon in the area. Lately, the local dungeons just have a horrifying atmosphere. The young man added that if they delayed the dungeon sweep in such a crowded area, the gap could spill over into big trouble. Sang-hee said that the young man was unusually energetic today. The girl thought that the young man lived in this neighborhood. Jong-do told his interlocutor that he would like to enter the dungeon tomorrow morning. Sang-hee didn't mind. That was it. The girl said that in that case, she would direct someone to the entrance of the dungeon tomorrow morning. Jong-do was happy. He was satisfied. Jong-do raised his hands, looked up, and shouted that everything is going according to plan. Sang-hee decided she should check out the neighborhood tomorrow after work. The next day in the dungeon, Jong-do defeated the monster and earned rewards. He added mana to his mana bank and increased his dexterity. He also increased his level. The young man checked his readings against the current one. The clock showed that there was a little more than half a day left. He realized that it couldn't be that simple. The young man concluded, so it was either rank A or rank C. When you think about the amount of damage that will be done to the city, the conclusion is obvious. It will most likely be a rank A dungeon. The portal opened on the large bridge. Jung-do arrived on the spot 10 minutes before the rupture began. But it was too quiet. Could this be a rank C dungeon after all? A squad car appeared on the deserted bridge. It was heading toward the portal. The car stopped in the vicinity of the entry point. The car door opened. An inspector appeared from the car. The young man appreciated the man's appearance. The guy thought it looked like he was worried for nothing. From the looks of him, he probably works for the government. Jung-do thought that the headquarters had decided to check the dungeon. Did they really have some information too? The young man decided not to hide anymore. He must go to the dungeon right now. Suddenly, a flash formed. The young man squeezed his eyes shut and covered himself with his hands. The entrance to the portal turned into a fiery blaze. Something was going on in the dungeon. One of the inspectors saw the young man and asked, "Who could it be?" The companion said it wasn't worth paying attention. This place would soon become a ruin anyway. Jung-do saw the two people who had gotten out of the car disappear. The young man thought it was teleportation. Jung-do should have known. Those two had been posing as government hunters all this time. The young man remembered one of them well. One of his skills was camouflage. Jung-do decided that there were more important things right now. He needed to stop the breakup. The young man used the guaranteed lottery. Liu Shan appeared. The emperor said he thought the young man was not doing well. Jung-do said that he was counting on Mr. Liu Shan. A young man using the lottery decided to choose combinations. This option was available to him. Jung-do chose a combination, Liu Shan and Liu Bu. He had saved this skill for an occasion like this. It was the best combination he could use right now. The young man asked Mr. Liu Shan to think of the strongest warrior he knows. Jung-do remembered the amulet So-young had given him. It was the blessing of the saint. The user received a big bonus to luck. Now, the number of cards that used to be uncountable has dwindled to a few hundred. With Liu Shan's good luck and So-young's holy amulet, he could obtain a valuable card. The portal opened. An untold number of monsters rushed out. They were armed. Jung-do had managed to activate the options he had received and stood at full strength, ready to fight the monsters that appeared. The young man's eyes lit up. He felt an explosive energy. The young man shouted that General Zhang Fei had arrived. Jung-do blocked the way for the oncoming army of monsters. The image of a strong warrior appeared above the young man. The warrior said hundreds of enemies in front of him, and a bridge behind his back. It brought back memories. The young man was assisted this time by General Zhang Fei. In the past, he had gone up against the opposing army on the bridge and turned all of them fleeing with his fierce shout. The general said that these monsters walk on two paws. It must be the end of the world. The young man noticed that despite their dog-like appearance, they were quite strong. The general shouted that it was of no consequence. They were but dust under his feet. Jung-do shouted that the game was starting and entered the battle against the outnumbered opponent. The young man activated the invincible talent. The damage he received when fighting multiple opponents alone was reduced. In this case, he needed it. The monsters roared and continued their onslaught. Jung-do worked his deadly weapon and scattered the enemies left and right. He confirmed his right to be called an S-class hunter. The young man used a hail of ferocious tiger attacks. The monster dogs scattered in different directions. Jung-do was invincible. The young man had an excellent weapon. The Lord of all weapons had recreated a perfect replica of an ancient weapon. The attacks dealt damage to the target area. The general said it was amazing. With this skill alone, the young man would be able to easily handle an entire army. The young man thought it was incredible. Jung-do knew that they didn't have much time. This wave of monsters was smaller than the previous one, but monsters kept coming out of the dungeon. In addition, the boss still hadn't appeared. The young man decided that he needed to reduce the number of monster dogs. The young man had to act as quickly as possible. The young man once again began to scatter the enemy in different directions, not giving them a chance to regain their senses. Square blows did a percentage damage, but it was enough to keep the enemy at bay. Using the dimensions of his weapon, Jung-do had the ability to keep the enemy close. A crossbow appeared in the hands of one of the monsters. It was a deadly weapon. The villain was determined. The general said the young man is about to take this enemy down. His blood boiled at the sight. He regretted that he did not have his own body. There was a pause. Jung-do looked around. The defeated opponents were lying around. The monster's weapons were lying around. The young man was tired. He realized that the longer the battle went on, the more his concentration would drop. And most importantly, he lacked the skills to assess the situation sensibly. The young man realized that he still had room to grow. Jong-do thought that someday he would reach that level on his own without using personalities. Judging from the energy emanating from the dungeon, there was going to be an incredible battle. The general said that unfortunately his time had come to an end. The veteran asked if the young man could handle it. The young man said that he was not going to back down in front of weaklings. The general smiled and said he liked the young man's train of thought. He told the young man to try to win so that he could tell him of his exploits next time. The young man received a message that he had been given a portion of the abilities of the summoned individual. It was a reward. Jong-do thought it was time to try his luck a second time. Liu Shan said that he was happy to see the young man again. Jong-do thanked him for his help with the past combination. But something told him that he would have to thank Liu Shan again. Liu Shan wished the young man good luck. Jong-do stood alone against the advancing monster dogs. The young man was presented with a linking lottery. For a card class to be rare or higher, he would reduce their number to 9 personalities. The young man regretted that he didn't get a diamond card. But this one will do too. Jong-do received the Sword of the King, Clarent. The skill level of the enemy attacking the user will be reduced by 10%. Also, a unique skill, Clarent, was available. Clarent, one of the 3 swords belonging to King Arthur. It is ironic that he was destroyed by this particular sword. Mordred, the renegade knight who had impaled his own father with those swords. The young man thought the personality could not betray him. From the dungeon, a boss monster appeared through the portal. It was the leader of the Kobolds. His level, 81. Jong-do noticed that this monster was the same level as Mordred. The young man suggested that this battle might take a bit longer. The monster boss ordered his subordinates to attack the opponent. He shouted loudly and thrust himself at the young man as well. Mordred shouted for the young man to pay attention to the king's sword. The young man swung and shouted, "Clarent!" The sword was red hot and it was incredible. The enemies were afraid to approach the young man. Every swing of that sword was a devastating blow to the monsters. The young man swooped down and slashed at anything he could get his hands on. After a short time, the bridge was strewn with the corpses of monsters. Mordred said that the young man had killed them with a single blow. Mordred said if the young man wanted to use the sword again, he would have to wait a little longer. The power of the sword is not infinite. Danger arose from behind. The surviving boss monster swung his sword and towered over our hero. Mordred shouted that there was danger behind him. At the last moment, the young man managed to dodge. He said that this boss was angry because he had destroyed his minions. Jong-do headed towards his opponent and landed a devastating blow. No one could resist Clarent. The young man swung his sword. The monster boss jumped back, unable to approach his opponent. The young man assumed that his and his opponent's strengths were about on the same level. He thought that he was in trouble. At this rate, he wouldn't be able to take down this beast within the time the skill was active. Besides, he didn't have much mana left. The opponent acted professionally. It was obvious that he had a lot of combat experience. Jong-do decided not to be ceremonious. He needed to deal with the enemy as quickly as possible. Time was running out. The young man knew that if he failed, he would surely die. He jumped up and struck his opponent with a stabbing blow. The young man didn't stop for a second. Mordred said that the young man should at least get some rest. Jong-do replied that when he had a chance to finish off an enemy, he should take it. Jong-do was in close proximity to his opponent. He swung his sword in front of his opponent. The monster was able to dodge and the sword slid by his side. The villain's sword pierced the young man through and through. The young man thought it was the end. Jong-do fell to his knees in front of his opponent. Mordred shouted from behind his master. The monster was about to finish what he started. The villain swung his sword in anticipation to strike his weakened opponent. The villain's sword came down and was already near the very neck of the young man. The unexpected has happened. The monster's sword became blocked. It hovered in the air and could not reach its target. The young man created a protective field. The young man with glowing eyes got to his feet and thrust his sword forward. He headed to meet his surprised opponent. The young man's dragon blood awakening was activated. However, the pain he was experiencing was intense. All of the young man's wounds have been healed. His resistance to enemy attacks has been temporarily increased. Jong-do was afraid that using this skill would cost him his life, but it seems like he was worried for nothing. Everything went well. The monster dog snarled and moved towards the young man. Jong-do swung his sword once again. He remembered that he was running out of time. The young man swept his sword in front of him very quickly. The monster was split in two. In the first instant, he didn't even realize anything. The villain had fallen. The battle was over. The danger to the city from this monster was over. Sang-hee ran to the young man's aid. She could feel the energy coming from the dungeon rupture. The girl was carrying her axe in her hands. Sang-hee hoped someone could buy some time and she would be waited for. The girl's astonishment was unbounded. She saw a strange picture on the bridge. It was quiet and not deserted. The bodies of monsters were scattered everywhere. Also, their weapons were lying around chaotically. Sang-hee saw Jong-do. Their gazes met. There was a mute question in the girl's eyes. How is this possible? The young man said that he had dealt with the breakup and asked the girl to call someone to clean up the place. The guy said he had something else. He had single-handedly dealt with each of the 311 monsters, and he didn't give up a single one to the girl. After these words, the young man fell at Sang-hee's feet exhausted. The girl was surprised that the young man was able to destroy all those monsters by himself. Sang-hee ordered the emergency personnel who arrived to help to take the young man to the hospital immediately. In the hospital, having regained consciousness, the young man familiarized himself with the information. He could not believe his eyes. Jong-do's parameters had risen to an unprecedented level. Looking at them, he could tell that he had reached rank B. In addition, he had gained another skill. This meant that he had a total of 10 skills. Some people find it difficult to perfect even one skill. He couldn't believe that he had 10 unique and powerful skills in his arsenal. Perhaps it was a side effect after using the Dragon Blood Awakening, but he barely restrained himself from starting to run around the room. Jong-do noted that he was getting stronger and stronger. The young man was delighted. There was a knock on the door. It was Sang-hee. She asked for permission to enter. The young man said the girl could come in. He was glad to see her again. At last she came in. The girl said she was very worried about the young man. The moment he suddenly lost consciousness, she was so glad that the young man was not seriously injured. The young man thought that the girl seemed to have been dealing with the aftermath of the incident all night. Her eyes were tired. The girl bowed on behalf of the association and told the young man that she was grateful to him. Thanks to this hunter, many lives had been saved. All because the young man was able to stop the rupture. Jong-do expressed his belief that anyone would do that in his place. It is the duty of every citizen. Sang-hee said she came here to talk about it. Jong-do thought he was about to be asked some uncomfortable questions. The young man said that Sang-hee could see the CCTV footage, but if she has any questions, he's willing to answer them. He will try to help in any way he can. Sang-hee asked if the young man remembered the faces of those criminals. The young man replied that unfortunately, he didn't. When he rushed to the scene, they had already used the teleportation scroll. Jong-do expressed his confidence that they were men. Sang-hee was taking her notes. The teleportation scroll, the men. Jong-do had figured out their identities, of course, but if he talked about it, the girl might start to suspect him. Sang-hee said she needed it just to be sure. Why was the young man near the scene of the accident? After all, the young man was there at the worst possible time, as if he had been sitting there waiting for this incident to happen. Jong-do replied, "It must be fate. He was going to clean out the dungeon in Gangnam-gu that day." Jong-do added that he accidentally bumped into them on his way home. Now, if you check the CCTV cameras, it should be visible whether he was waiting somewhere nearby or not. Sang-hee apologized for being suspicious of the young man. The young man knew that such a thing could happen, so he tried to stay out of sight of the cameras. Therefore, no one could see him. Jong-do asked if he could ask the girl a question. Sang-hee said she would answer all the questions. The young man wondered if the girl was sure that the guild Karma wasn't behind this. Sang-hee said that they don't have proof yet. However, this guild, they're main suspects. Jong-do said that in that case, the previous two breakups were just experiments. Yesterday's incident could be considered a real terrorist attack. At least that's what he thinks. Sang-hee said, "Since this guild is one of the largest, they need solid proof. They reinforced the patrols to prevent any more incidents like this from happening." The girl added that the monsters the young man defeated yesterday was a good result for the hunters. 311 corpses and all the bounty received are now stored in the association. Since the number of items is quite large, why wouldn't a young man entrust their sale to an auction company? Monster corpses can be used in many different fields. In addition, they are so valuable that people will buy them outright. The association will cover all additional costs. So all the young man will have to do is sit on the mountain of money he will make. The young man said he was grateful for the care he received. Sang-hee said that it was nothing compared to what the young man had done for the city. The girl added that it was time for her to leave. She wished the young man a good night's rest. Jung-do was already dreaming of his mountain of money and thought of how he would spend it. Something incredible happened in the hospital room. The young man could not understand what was happening. A portal opened in the ceiling. Jung-do noticed that someone was coming down through the portal to him. He was frightened and wondered who it could be. Winry Makina appeared in the young man's room. Jung-do wondered what she was doing here. The woman said she had come to reward the young man, of course. The young man thought it would be a reward from the true universe. Makina asked what kind of reward the young man would like. She could not guarantee that his wish would be fulfilled, but she would try to find a compromise. The wish was ready at once. Jung-do requested that his mana limit be raised to 999, or make it so that his mana wouldn't be spent even when using a skill. Makina immediately replied that such a request was denied. Even if she granted the young man such privileges, his parameters would soon return to normal. The girl, smiling, said that she understood the young man's intention. The young man wants more mana so he can use the lottery more often. John-do replies that he does. He'll be able to increase his stats and gain new skills as long as he gets lucky in the lottery. Makina said that in that case, she had a solution to the young man's problem. The boy rejoiced. Would she increase his mana limit after all? The girl said that she would give him this card. Judging by the expression on her face and her shining eyes, it was something supernatural. Jung-do inquired how he could use this ticket. With this ticket, the young man will be able to use the linking lottery once. Plus, he'll be able to buy that ticket. The guy asked how much he could buy it for. He was interested in the price. The girl said the young man would have to pay with his characteristics: strength, agility, perception, endurance. He will be able to get one ticket for every characteristic point lost. The young man thought about this girl. Why did she come here? I mean, he's using the skill to raise the characteristics, and she wants him to buy tickets for them. Makina said the young man's luck in the binder lottery isn't too bad. For every 10 characteristic points, the young man will be able to use the lottery 10 times. For those 10 times, the young man can get a rare card, even though it would lose 10 characteristic points. To the young man, this advantage seemed elusive. Makina added that in 30 tries, the young man would get 3 diamond cards. And with all the gold cards he had received, the girl could say that the young man had been born quite lucky. If the young man seizes this opportunity, he will become even stronger. She declares this with all confidence. Jung-do thought about it and decided that the girl was right. Makina was happy that the young man thought so. The girl stated that she would allow herself to give the young man his reward. A new feature, purchase, was added to the young man. The young man learned that characteristics lost due to the use of purchase would be automatically exchanged for binder lottery tickets. Jung-do wondered if Makina would get any bonuses if he used this ability. She seems much more interested in it than before. The girl did not answer and said that she had to go. The young man was suspicious. He felt a little deceived. There was a knock at the door. It was So-yoon. She asked if she could come in. Jung-do said that the girl could go in. The conversation with Makina remained unfinished. The girl said she got a call from the association. Did he hurt himself? The boy said he was just overworked, but now he's completely healthy. So-yoon exhaled and said that it was like a mountain off her shoulders. Jung-do couldn't calm down after seeing Makini. Jung-do asked if So-yoon would be willing to team up with him. The guy added that a talented girl like her could easily get into a major guild. So-yoon said that she really wanted to team up with the young man. She was willing to do it right now. The girl turned around and ran away. She shouted she was on her way to get ready. Jung-do pondered. He thought that he should try using Makini's suggestion once. He would have to give up one ability. A young man decided to just look. He got the first purchase bonus. The young man would get a free ticket for every first purchase. The guy thought that the benefit was obvious, considering he would get 20 tickets for 10 performance points. But he wouldn't want to become addicted because of it. John-do began to be enticed by offering a rookie bonus. Within an hour, he would receive an extra ticket for every purchase. The young man gave in. He said that he would do it now. The man decided for himself that he would just try it. After the first attempt, the young man felt that luck had turned to face him. He had 30 tickets for the linking lottery in his hands. Jong-do looked around. There was no one nearby. He decided to start. After the first attempt, the young man thought, "No big deal, this is just the beginning." After the 10th attempt, he thought he still had a lot of tickets left. After the 28th attempt, his nerves were frayed. How could this be possible? How could he not get anything of value? On the 29th attempt, Emperor Liu Shan appeared. He said hello to the young man. The emperor asked what had caused the young man to be so skewered. The boy kneeling on his knees said that without Liu Shan, he was just a loser. The emperor asked what happened to the young man. The young man thought that with Liu Shan's good luck, and considering that he should get a rare or more valuable card for his last 30th attempt, Jong-do was waiting for the diamond card. But the miracle didn't happen. In the morning, Sang-hee asked if the young man was definitely well. Jong-do said he was fine. He just had nightmares last night. The young man is over the limit. You can only purchase tickets 10 times a week. The young man demanded more spins to break even. The emperor said that the young man should stop. It was a good thing he could only buy 10 tickets a week. Otherwise, he would have lost all his features on emotion. Sang-hee motioned for the young man to follow him. The girl showed the young man where the corpses and loot from the monsters were kept. Sang-hee said that they have separated the damaged bodies that have no value. The equipment is stored in other compartments. Sang-hee said that they also separated the equipment that contains mana. The companion suggested that the young man take a look at this outfit and decide what to do with it, sell it or keep it. Jong-do picked up the gloves and turned on the research mode. These were the combat gloves of a Cobalt leader. Using them added mana, stamina, and perception to the young man. The young man realized that these gloves increased his mana limit. Items like this are very rare. Jong-do tried on these gloves. They fit him like a glove. It was his size. The young man decided he wouldn't sell them. A phone call rang. Sang-hee answered it. She told the young man that a representative of the guild that owned the dungeon where the breakup had occurred wanted to meet with him. Jong-do was a little surprised. "Why do you have to go out with him?" The guild representative decided to meet and look at this show-off. The young man asked his companion why the guild representative wanted to meet him. The girl assumed that they wanted to recruit him into their guild. Sang-hee added, "They might want to claim the loot." The young man looked sadly at the gloves. He had gotten used to them. The girl stated that she would do everything she could to keep the young man's loot rights. Jong-do said he was putting his fate in Sang-hee's hands. Kim Sun-seo of the Kim Guild extended his hand to the young man and said it was nice to meet him. The girl introduced herself as well. Pointing at Jong-do, she said that this young man was the hunter who resolved the breakup. Kim Sun-seo said that he would like to learn more about the incident. He asked the young man to produce evidence. The man added, he wants to hear evidence that will fully satisfy him. For example, CCTV footage. Sang-hee said it's not in her jurisdiction. She cannot disseminate such information without the hunter's permission because of the risk of leaking personal information. Jong-do thought that he would like to reveal as little information about himself as possible. But it seems like he has no other choice, or else the problems might get worse. Mr. Kim said he understood. It would be very unpleasant if the young man's secret techniques were revealed. Mr. Kim said in that case he would have another suggestion. As always in such cases, Kim Sun-seo offered to fight him. If the young man can prove that his abilities were enough to stop the breakup, he will leave without any objection. Jong-do thought, why would he want to do that? It didn't make sense. The young man thought that the guild representative was looking for a fight. It was only to find out what the young man was capable of. Mr. Kim asked, wondering if something was wrong. The young man turned on the research mode. This person seemed familiar to him. The guy thought, wasn't he the one he saw before the monsters came out on the bridge? What does all this mean? Jong-do apologized and said that he needed to have a private talk with squad leader Seo Sang-hee. The young man said he urgently needed a soundproof room. The girl showed him the direction to follow. Once in the soundproof room, Sang-hee asked what the young man wanted to talk to her about. Just in case, Jong-do, while looking at his interlocutor, also turned on the research mode. The guy had confidence in this girl. Her talent symbolized faith in the other person and the ability to keep a promise. Jong-do said that he's about to share strictly private information with the girl, and asked that she keep it a secret. Sang-hee said that this organization is committed to keeping information about the hunter's secret. The young man said he was compelled to believe in the girl and her talent of trust. Sang-hee wondered, how did the young man know about this talent? John Doe told about her other skills as well. The girl was amazed. When asked how he does it, the young man said he has a special skill. Its name, research. John Doe added that this skill allows him to view information about other people. Name, level, talents, and even their skills. The girl was discouraged. Sang-hee asked why the young man was telling her all this. Jung Do replied that the person they just saw was not Kim Sun-seo. His real name is Sung Dong-hak. He was present when the breakup started. The guy admitted that he's not very comfortable giving out personal information about himself, but he can't sit back when a terrorist is standing in front of him. Sang-hee agreed that it was hard for the young man to decide to do that. The guy said to prove the fact that this man was a terrorist, he would have to reveal his skill to the organization. The girl said he shouldn't do that. The young man wondered why. Sang-hee replied that she was too embarrassed to talk about it. The girl noticed that lately she was beginning to think there was a spy among them. They were given no special instructions in executive session despite the emergency. Plus, the start time of the burst coincides with the window in patrolling. Be that as it may, the young man cannot reveal this skill of organization. If this skill is as strong as he says it is, the young man is definitely in danger. The guy responded, meaning he needs to prove this person is a terrorist without revealing his research skill. The young men returned, and Jung-do apologized for having to wait for them. Mr. Kim expressed his hope that their conversation was successful. Jung-do said, they figured he was using his skill so he could avoid the duel. Thus, Mr. Kim will accept the evidence without any objection. Kim said that this is an extremely reasonable decision. The man thought it was fortunate that things had worked out so well. He just wanted to see how strong the young man was, but now he could see even his skills. Jung-do decided to use the guaranteed lottery. If they had already made the guest wait so long, he would present the evidence immediately. Suddenly, a strange woman appeared and greeted the young man. She said that he looked much better today than yesterday. One of the gold cards he got yesterday was the truthful Jaina. Her characteristics were not much different from Liu Shan, but her specialty was her skill. Jung-do said he's ready to start. Mr. Kim replied that he's already waiting. The young man said the conditions were met. The truth room skill was used. Sang-hee stated that it's already done. Mr. Kim stated that he has no idea what just happened. John Doe asked the girl to repeat after him. He said the phrase, "I am a man." The girl agreed. Sang-hee tried to say the phrase, but she failed. She stammered half a word. Jung-do said it would look something like this. Mr. Kim tensed up. The young man said it was the guest's turn. The guy asked as Mr. Kim repeated his name. The man wanted to say that he was Kim Sun-seo, but he couldn't. It was like he had water in his mouth. Jung-do said that Mr. Kim's desire to fight might have caused him a lot of trouble. He thinks that compared to that, his request is nothing. If Kim calls his name, the young man will give him all the loot from the dungeon and do whatever he asks. Kim couldn't pronounce the name he wanted to say, no matter how hard he tried. Jung-do looked into the eyes of his interlocutor and said that he couldn't say anything, because everything he said was a lie. The young man, looking into the eyes of his interlocutor, said his name was Sung Dong-hak. The imposter shouted that he was going to show the young man, and he rushed at him with his fists. Sang-hee shouted that she wouldn't let that happen, and rushed forward. The girl wanted to hit Mr. Kim, but he turned on his disguise mode and was able to avoid the blow. The man took out a hunting knife and shouted that for him to hide his presence from a S-rank hunter was a one-off. Sung Dong-hak swung his knife and shouted that he was about to destroy the young man. Jung-do was ready to take the fight. Sang-hee jumped up and delivered a crushing leg kick, driving her opponent in the jaw. The villain was deactivated. Jung-do asked, "He's not going to die from that punch, is he?" The girl handcuffed the criminal and took off his mask. She said that the rascal had completely fooled her. Since his mana, the watch also belonged to Kim Sun-seo. The young man asked what Sang-hee was going to do to him. The girl said that they would interrogate him and put him in jail. Or rather, the other way around. Put him in jail, and then interrogate him. Jung-do said that he would be able to help the girl with that. A young man started the lottery. He said the target would be Sung Dong-hak. John Doe and Sang-hee found out that Kim Sun-seo was destroyed 2 days ago by that scumbag. Sung Dong-hak is a member of the Karma Guild. The young man said what was to be expected. The girl replied that it was. Unbelievable. The young man can use his skill to find out things like that too. Karma Guild. The guild office is located in a small town at the foot of the mountains. The guild representative said that they had lost contact with Sung Dong Hak. The masked people that the guild representative was addressing were all around. They took this information silently. The guild rep said it looks like he's been captured. Does the association know anything about it? Mask said he can't get more information. Seo Sung-hee is handling it in the utmost secrecy. The hooded man said that Seo Sung-hee won't just say anything. But to be on the safe side, it's better to take him out quietly. The masked woman asked what they were going to do about the guy who stopped the breakup. After all, they had sent a man down there to get information on this guy. But all they found out was his name, and that his rank, E, and also that he was able to stop the rupture all by himself. The masked men wondered, did a low-ranked hunter really stop the rupture by himself? Isn't he an S-rank hunter covered by the association? Come to think of it, isn't this the same guy who distinguished himself on the Academy's final exam? He was there by luck when they wanted to take out Kim Suntae, which has nothing to do with the breakup incident. Bear Mask said, he had information that someone was waiting nearby, as if he knew of the impending breakup. Mask added, there's a possibility they have a rat in their ranks. He thinks we should concentrate on that now. The hooded man told them to stop this worthless talk already. They'll deal with Jongdo later. Another disgruntled masked man said they put a lot of hard work and time into this breakup. Is it really necessary to leave that young man alone after what he did? The leader objected. They shouldn't worry about what might have happened by accident. Mask objected, for they had just said that this young man was waiting in that place. The hooded man said he was very disappointed. You have to be careful not to make mistakes from now on. The meeting was over. Using teleportation, all the masks disappeared except for one. Mask was fundamentally disagreeing. Why should this young man be left alone? Mask said after he embarrassed him in front of him, Jongdo is not a survivor. Sang-hee said hello and motioned for Mr. Hunter to proceed to the office. Jongdo told the girl that she looked really exhausted. Did it really not go that smoothly? Sang-hee said that the arrestee flatly refuses to talk. Therefore, they haven't made any progress in the investigation. The girl, stroking her axe, said she had suggested harsher methods, but she was not supported. The girl added that she was probably not allowed because there was a rat in the association. The boy thought she had been refused for other reasons. Sang-hee said that she was on the case anyway. If they can get him to talk, they can get rid of the Karma Guild all over the country. Sang-hee said she had more information about the young man's prey. The young man wondered if there was a problem. The girl said since the value of the items was extremely high, he would have to pay an impressive tax. As such, Sang-hee suggested that the young man raise his hunter rank. With his skills, it wouldn't be much of a problem. The higher the rank, the lower the tax. The young man wanted to get started on this now. The girl led the young man to where the tests for B to S rank hunters are held. Sang-hee said if a young man was able to clear the A rank dungeon, he would be able to pass the B rank test. The tests are conducted using virtual reality. If the examiner recognized the young man's strength, he would be immediately promoted in rank. Jongdo thought that he could compensate for his lack of characterization with the skill play. A man approached the girl and said hello. He said, "Is this the head of SEO's squad, the pride of their association?" The girl said she hadn't seen her teacher in a long time. There was no joy on her face. The man said that Sang-hee was his most talented student. She was so busy advancing in her career that she had forgotten about her old teacher. Sang-hee said if the teacher wanted to see him so badly, he could have come himself. The man said that his teacher pride wouldn't let him do that. The girl said that if it were her will, she would never have met him at all. The teacher asked what had brought her here this time. Sang-hee said that one of the organization's most important guests wanted to take the rank promotion test. So she brought him here. The man rejoiced. This was the same hunter who had stopped the rip alone. The big man extended his hand to the young man and said his name was Yang Chul-san. The young man also introduced himself and shook his hand. The girl asked for a rank B examiner to be called. Sang-hee noticed that after evaluating all the dungeon mopped-up youths, it was decided that rank B was the maximum that was available to him. But of course, his skills were far beyond that level. The man noticed that his student had a very high opinion of this young man. Jang Chul-sang said that he would personally take care of testing the young man. He was very curious about it. The girl protested. After all, her teacher is an exclusive S-rank examiner. After all, Chul-sang doesn't even want to evaluate hunters because it's too boring for him. Jang Chul-sang said he was just dying of boredom. Chul Sang made a menacing look and asked the young man if he agreed to this arrangement. The young man said that it was a great honor for him. It is not often that he gets the opportunity to fight an S-rank hunter. The man stated that he liked the young man's enthusiasm. Jungdo activated his game talent. All of his characteristics were increased by 100%. Downloading the game for the test was complete. The young man found himself with a spear in his hands. The young man decided to check his status in the virtual space. Jungdo was a little disappointed by what he saw. Was it really the maximum that a level 2 game talent could provide? Or were there other limitations that he didn't know about yet? The young man decided to deal with it later. Right now, he should concentrate on the battle. The opponent had a huge hammer in his hands. Chul Sang said that the spear, it's a good weapon. The man smiled smugly. Chul Sang added, if a warrior considers himself a real man, he should use heavy weapons. The big man raised a huge hammer above him. Chul Sang lowered the hammer with all his might and struck the ground with it. The ground cracked in all directions. A sea of dust rose up all around. Chul Sang says he'll let the young man strike first, and he has to show what he can do. The young man said he didn't mind and went on the attack. He put his spear forward and bravely rushed into battle. The big man evaded the young man's attack and immediately contracted it. Swinging his hammer, he was about to strike. The young man put his spear forward to block it. After a short while, Chul Sang stopped the fight and said that the young man had passed. Even a rank A hunter wouldn't be able to react to his spear strikes in time. The man added, obviously the young man had passed the test. He must have been trained by real masters. Jungdo replied that his masters are very skilled at what they do. Jungdo asked, is that the end of it? Chul Sang said he would like to say, of course, but that would be a huge letdown for both of them. The young man said that he agreed with his opponent. Chul Sang said that this is what a real man should do. The big guy swung his hammer and went on the attack again. The young man applied the green dragon maneuver. He dodged the hammer and counterattacked with his spear. The man noted that the young man was faster than he had been before. Jungdo thought if it wasn't for the game skill, he would have lost already after the first strike. The young man wanted to reach the same heights without using that talent. The young man blocked the hammer's blow with his spear. He held on with his last strength. The opponent said, the young man seemed to have too little experience for his characteristics. The man sized up the young man and asked if he possessed the talent of acting. Striking again, Chul Sang repeated his question. The young man remained silent. The man noticed that he made the young man nervous with his question. And at some point, the young man opened up. Finding himself at a disadvantage, the boy could not stay on his feet and fell on his back. His opponent stood over him, swinging his hammer. Chul Sang lowered the hammer near the young man's head, hitting the ground with it. The young man said as he admitted defeat. The big guy said he had fun, but he wanted to make it last longer. So he decided to cheat a little. He hoped for understanding. Jungdo replied that he still had a lot to learn. Jungdo wondered, how did his opponent guess? Chul Sang asked if the young man was referring to his talent. The man said that before the young man, he had met many who suddenly stopped strong in virtual space. But unlike those useless tykes, the young man was able to stop the gap all by himself. Chul Sang said they'll see each other outside. Sang Hee is already waiting for them. The young man thought he still had a lot to learn. The young man was awarded a rank of B and presented with a certificate to that effect. The young man said thank you. John Doe said that, in that case, he's leaving, and thanked everyone here for being a part of this event. Sang Hee asked what kind of evaluation her teacher would give the young man. The teacher replied that it had been a long time since he had met interesting people. He was sure they would meet again. Sang Hee said that she wanted to try to fight Mr. Jong Do too. Chul Sang said he had a lot of fun. I think he's going to leave now. The girl stopped the teacher. Wasn't he the one who had grumbled a few minutes ago that she hadn't visited him in a while? Sang Hee said that it's been a long time since they've practiced. Why don't they fight so the teacher can check how much his student has grown? The man thanked for the offer but said he was tired. Sang Hee noticed that didn't sound like him. Since when did the teacher start running away from a good fight? The girl took her axe and told the teacher to get ready to fight. The teacher's eyes went to his forehead. Jong Do went out for some fresh air after receiving the certificate. He needed to rest, and he wanted to gather his thoughts. The young man stepped closer, and the young man was called out by So Yoon. The guy apologized and asked how long had she been waiting for him. The girl said that she herself had just arrived. So-young was very happy that she was going on a mission with Jong-do. She hoped that the young man wouldn't notice how worried she was. It was like some newcomer. So-young asked, "When are they moving out?" The young man looked somewhere in the distance and said, "Finally, he came too." Heshik appeared on the horizon. He waved to the young men, smiling. Heshik was touched. He said he was very happy that Jong-do had written to him. The young man had finally accepted him as his junior assistant. Jong-do said that Haishik shouldn't make a drama here. They'll work together, and if he doesn't like it, Haishik can leave the group. Haishik said that would never happen. Hashik said hello to Ms. So-young. He said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The young man expressed his hope that they would make a good team. The girl said she was glad too. All her dreams of two people's company were shattered. Jong-do said since everyone is gathered, we can go to the dungeon that Heshik found. So-young asked where it was. The young man said it was Hwasheng Fortress in Suwon. The portal was closed to the public. Strange monsters were in this dungeon. They were like nothing else. The young man handled the creature very easily. He thought, is it really that easy? Was it because the dungeon was a rank E dungeon? He would have cleared it alone in 10 minutes. Jong-do watched his partners fight. After all, he knew that he didn't come here to clear the dungeon alone. Jong-do wanted the two of them to gain combat experience, fighting such monsters. Finishing off another monster wasn't too difficult for the young man. The young man looked at So-yoon and thought that she was not only good as a priestess but also as a battle monk. Heshik turned to the young man with a question. The young man said he was always happy to help. Heshik noticed that Ms. So-yoon always looked at him angrily. Had he done something to make her angry? Jong-do said that Heshik was a little tactless. In truth, they were both tactless. The young men, having cleared the approach, said they had reached the monster boss room. Jong-do said that he would try not to interfere with the young men's battle. So they have to put all their strength to put this boss down. The young man added, he hopes these two will definitely handle him. Heshik said they wouldn't let their boss down. The young man said they were going forward and swung the doors open. A strange monster boss with glowing eyes stood right in front of them. Surprisingly, this monster was very agile. It shouted something and jumped up high. Heshik was a little scared and hid behind his huge shield. Jong-do told the young man to be more confident. The monster shouted something incomprehensible and struck his opponent. Hashik had time to put up a shield to defend himself. The young man thought, if Heshik could block the monster's attack, it would be possible to hit his opponent on the back. So-young connected and with a deft move, using the forces of her opponent's inertia to send him into a knockdown. Jong-do praised the girl and told her to keep it up. Heshik was upset that he hadn't been praised yet. After the sweep, the young man praised his team. He said that the guys had done a great job. Heshik asked if the young man would go with them to the association to test his skills. The young man said no. Jong-do said he had some urgent things to do, so they can go without him. Jong-do gave his friends a look and thought that he was finally rid of them. Liu Shan looked up and said, "This is a very unbelievable castle. Is the young man really going to spin the lottery here?" Jong-do reminded the emperor how he had asked him to remember the strongest general. Liu Shan replied as he said earlier. General Zhao Zhilong immediately came to his mind, not Zhang Fei. General Zhao was the strongest general he knew live. Jong-do thanked the emperor for that. The young man decided to play the linking lottery. The young man knew that on that night at Songsu Bridge, he had summoned Zhang Fei specifically not because Liu Shan thought he was the strongest general. This was because he himself was on the bridge. Of course, the first thing that would come to mind in such a situation would be Zhang Fei's battle on Zhangpanpo Bridge. This means that the identity a young man summons with a link lottery must be related to his location and their lore. A young man was dealt a diamond card. It was quite unexpected. Jong-do spun to the left and right. It seemed strange to him. Why didn't he feel any change? A new personality appeared in front of the young man. The man said it was Hwasheng. What nostalgia. Jong-do replied that it was nice to meet you. He said his name. The young man thought that this character's stats were too low for the diamond card. The hero said that the young man's name translates to straight path. He liked that and said it was a great name. Jong-do thanked him for the compliment. The character said they were very lucky to be in Hwasheng specifically. The interlocutor asked the young man if he would like to get the treasure he had hidden in this place. Jong-do closed his eyes in pleasure and said that he was very eager, which was to be expected from a diamond card. The character said when the king ordered him to build the place, he was so enthusiastic that he added a lot of all sorts of structures and secret rooms in different places. The young man had to find the brick on the right side of the main gate, 7th from the bottom. The young man should use this brick as a starting point, counting 616 bricks to the right. He should direct his QA energy to the last brick. After that, the young man should count out the 7th brick from the bottom on the left side of the gate and count out another 922 bricks to the left. Jongdo thought, is there some special meaning behind these numbers? The interlocutor replied that it was his birthday and the king's birthday. Jongdo said that he had finally found the right brick. Now he has to direct his chai there. After the young man fulfilled all the requirements, a portal appeared near him. It was a portal to a treasure dungeon. The scholar said if the young man went inside and could pass his test, he would get the treasure. Jongdo asked, because the interlocutor left them for his successor, right? The young man doesn't think anyone else would be able to figure out such a convoluted scheme. The man said everything would be all right. After all, the young man had managed to find the treasure after all these years. He told the young man not to be shy and to enter the dungeon faster. Waiting for the young man in the dungeon was a huge giant with a sword on his shoulder. The scholar said if Jongdo can pass the test of knowledge and the test of his guard's strength, he can get advice and treasure. The hero's helper disappeared. He said if the young man succeeded, he should summon him again. The young man decided to use the discovery skill. This skill allows seekers to find a dungeon. The giant said he was ready to begin the test of the young man. It would be a test of knowledge, the unique moonlight that shines over all the rivers. Rivers, they are the inhabitants of this world. The moon is the yin and yang. The guard asked the question, who is meant by yin and yang? Jongdo immediately began to think. The young man decided he had the answer. He said that it was King Jongcho. He thought that this answer was obvious. The giant struck the ground with his powerful weapon and said the answer was correct. The guard, flashing his eyes, said that they would now proceed to the test of strength. The young man should prepare his weapon. Jongdo put his energized halberd forward. Jongdo looked at his opponent, turning on the research mode. The young man realized that it was a level 40 goblin king. The guy thought that if this king was a level 40 king, their stats should be around the same level. The giant told the young man to defend himself and raised his powerful weapon high above his head. His eyes continued to glitter. Jongdo repelled his opponent's attack and prepared to go forward himself. The young man shouted, hoping to scare his opponent. He moved forward. Jongdo's mental attack failed. The Goblin King was not afraid. The opponent's damage was reduced by 10%. The young man thought that his skill didn't work on this goblin because of the difference in levels. The Goblin King said that this opponent is very fast, but he can see right through him anyway. Jongdo put his halberd forward and told the opponent to try to dodge the next strike. The young man used the Green Dragon's maneuver. The Goblin King dodged it. He only gave a sly shout in response. The giant said that this time his opponent was very close, but still he is not good enough to win. Jongdo shouted that this wasn't the end. With his eyes flashing, he jumped high up and gave his opponent a staggering blow from the top. The giant had time to react and block the young man's blow. He raised his powerful weapon in front of him. Preventing himself from being attacked. The young man, looking directly into his opponent's eyes, came close to him. He kept his spear at his side. The enemy said that the young man was a fool if he was going to attack with a spear at close range. Suddenly, the giant noticed that the young man was no longer holding a spear but a sword. He had underestimated his opponent. The giant asked what strange weapon his opponent was using. This weapon looks like his club. Jongdo said the giant was wrong. His weapon is better than that big club. The young man dodged. He struck a powerful blow, and his opponent dropped his weapon from his hands. His huge stick flew aside. The next moment, the young man's sword was near his opponent's neck. The Goblin King said that he had lost. The young man had passed the test of strength. After that, Jongdo noticed a crack appeared in the wall nearby. The crack widened and turned into a large hole. The young man realized that there was a secret room behind that wall. Jongdo entered the secret room through a hole in the wall. There was a table in the middle of the room. On the table were diaries and a strange mechanism. This interested the young man. The young man stepped closer. Since he was dealing with a scientist, he thought that these objects had significance. Jongdo remembered, after all, This scholar had asked to call on him when the young man found the reward. He noticed that he could summon it with his amount of mana, even though it was a diamond card. The scientific assistant said it looked like the young man had passed the test after all. He added that he had no doubts about the young man. The interlocutor told the young man to take the Chronicles of Medicine with him. He would need those notes. The young man was asked to comprehend the skill of chronicling medicine. The young man was surprised. The scientist said he lost 6 children to smallpox. So he spent a long time doing research, and as a result, he wrote this book to alleviate people's suffering. The young man received a message that he had learned the skill Chronicles of Medicine. He became the owner of the skill Resilience. The young man felt the two skills merge. A message appeared that he had learned the skill Full Immunity. Now the young man was immune to all diseases and poisons. The young man was glad that now he would not die in the dungeon. The next subject is a study of the territory of the whole state. This is a book on the geography of the country, which the scholar wrote while traveling through different parts of the state. The scientist said that this book would help the young man in orienteering. The young man was told that he had studied a survey of the territory of the state. Zhang received the skill Detection. The two skills merged due to the game talent feature. The young man has learned the skill Dungeon Map. All dungeons within a certain radius will be marked on the young man's mini-map. Zhang jumped up and down with joy. Now he wouldn't have to agonize to find the dungeon. It was the turn of the last item. The young man was getting the skill Loading Crane. This skill was changed for the convenience of the user. Zhang studied the skill Inventory. It was a game inventory. The young man immediately decided to test how it worked. The young man took the stone in his hands. Zhang leaned the stone against the digital panel. In the section, Inventory. At the same moment, the stone appeared on the scoreboard. The object was digitized and became virtual. The young man now had the stone available in the game. The young man understood how it worked. Zhang came out of the dungeon. The scientist said he hoped he was able to help the young man. The hunter was pleased. He said that his interlocutor had no idea how much he had helped him, and he thanked the scientist. The young man and the hero scientist said goodbye. The man said that he hoped to meet the young man in the future. Zhang decided to test his skills in action. The young man was interested in the quality of their impact while performing tasks. Zhang pointed out that Full Immunity, Inventory, and Dungeon Map, those are really cool skills. He got lucky today. The young man thought that was the end of it for now. He just didn't really understand how the dungeon map worked. He would have to Google the answers to that question. The young man launched a virtual map and attempted to navigate the area using his point of dislocation. The boy realized that he was in the center of the map. This location suited him just fine. It increased the range of vision. The young man guessed that all the dots around him were dungeons. They were marked with different colors. The young man decided to check everything in practice and make sure of the information he received personally. The young man, according to the map, approached the nearest point. The map didn't deceive him. There was indeed an entrance to the dungeon in front of him. Zhang circled the portal. It was just as he thought it would be. It was a really cool map. The young man became upset. He was offended that someone had already reserved this dungeon. The flagging and the perimeter fence said so. Zhang looked at the map again. The green dot was the rank C dungeon he had checked on the way. The yellow dot he was near now was a rank B dungeon. The young man once again assumed that most likely each rank of the dungeon would correspond to a different color of the rainbow. The young man didn't want to disappoint himself by stumbling into dungeons that were already occupied. He decided to open the notification window and customize it. The young man received a message that from now on, he would receive notifications when a new dungeon appeared. That was what he needed at this point. The young man was glad. Zhang emotionally said that all the dungeons in the neighborhood would now belong to him. In yet another dungeon, a young man fighting a monster defeated it effortlessly. Soyun was amazed at her boss's skillful actions. The green monster was lying at their feet. A bloody sphere of poison appeared near the monster. It was a well-deserved reward. The young man thought that he certainly had full immunity, but he would take this orb just in case. Everything would come in handy in the household. After the operation was completed, Soyun said that not only could he easily defend a rank E dungeon, but a rank D dungeon was no problem at all. Zhang replied that it was all thanks to his colleagues. Heshik asked if the young man had any other plans for today. Jong-do replied that he was going to practice for a while. But that's it. Soyeon said that she didn't have much of a plan either. Haeshik suggested his friends to visit his house in that case, since he also has a training room with a VR machine at home. Jong-do was very surprised. There are so few of these machines in the world. You can count them on the fingers of one hand, and Haeshik has one of them. The young man knew that Haeshik had bought several dungeons for them. How much money did this guy have? Haeshik said he's a little embarrassed to talk about it, but his brother, who he lives with, makes a lot of money. Haeshik thought that Jong-do was talking about wanting to meet Soyoung in person. Jong-do stated that as the leader of the team, he wouldn't mind meeting the families of his subordinates. Haeshik clapped his hands happily. Haeshik said he would order a car now, and as soon as everyone was ready, they were on their way. Haeshik ordered a huge limousine. When the young men arrived at their destination, they were very surprised. When they saw the house where the young man lived, Jong-do asked in surprise, "Does Haeshik really mean to say that he has an apartment in this building?" Haeshik said that's not quite true. This whole house belongs to him. As the young men rode up in the elevator, Jong-do wondered what Haeshik's brother was doing if he could afford all this. The young men went into the apartment. Haeshik's brother met them and said it was nice to meet him. The young man introduced himself and said he was Kang Hae-chun, and he's Haeshik's brother. Jong-do said it was nice to meet him and gave his name. It hit the young man. Could it be that he had now met Kang Hae-chun? Images of legendary hunters flashed before the young man's eyes. It turns out that this young man is one of the 8 hunters, SS rank. Haeshik confirmed and said that his brother is exactly that person. Jong-do wondered why Haeshik hadn't told him before. Haeshik replied that his brother had told him that there were people who would feel uncomfortable around him if they knew about it. Jong-do couldn't believe that he had personally said hello to a SS rank hunter. In front of him was a living legend. Kang Hae-chun said he felt like he and the young man had met somewhere before. Jong-do was surprised. Where could he have met this person before? It was a duel of glances. The young men stared intently into each other's eyes. Jong-do couldn't remember the person he was talking to. Kang Hae-chun shouted that he remembered. After all, in front of him, a professional player, and called out the young man's nickname. The young man was happy to see Jong-do. Jong-do was surprised. How did the interlocutor know his nickname from a professional game? The interviewer said he was a huge fan of the young man. Haeshik and Soyoon watched the dialogue between the 2 hunters with interest. They stood silent, their mouths open. The landlord invited the young people to pass and make themselves comfortable in the living room. Kang Hae-chun recalled during the 3rd game of the Spring Split Finals, where he vanished his opponent when his team was on the verge of defeat after a bad fighting game. Soyoon picked up on this and said that this game was very great indeed. But personally, she thinks the young man's better games were during next year's summer split. The landlord and Soyoung began to heatedly discuss Jong-do's games from past seasons. When the young man was performing well, Jong-do covered his face with his hands and didn't understand why they brought it up in conversation. Haeshik asked if Jong-do was really a fighter in virtual games. He didn't know that detail in his boss's biography. Jong-do replied that when he was younger, he was a little-known player in a professional league. Kang Hae-chun disagreed. What do you mean he's not well-known? Everyone knew about that player. Unlike the other players who use strategies with the maximum chance of winning, Jong-do won brightly and epically, mesmerizing all the spectators. That's how this player was. The host stated that he was moved by the young man's acting, so he was among the first to join his fan club. Jong-do blushed and asked the 2 to change the topic of conversation. Soyoung said that she was the one who created this fan club. Jong-do jumped up and yelled for them to stop talking about the topic. The girl looked at her watch and said it was getting pretty late. Soyoung apologized and said she had to leave. Haeshik asks Jong-do to sit still. He's about to call a cab for Soyoung, so that should take her home safely. Kang Hae-chun bowed to the young man and apologized for still not thanking him for saving Haeshik's life. Jong-do said that he shouldn't be grateful. He was just lucky. The interlocutor said that Jong-do is very polite, just like they say he is. He will personally see to Haeshik's training so that he won't be a burden on their next trips. Jong-do didn't think he would ever be able to meet Kang Hae-chun. The young man turned on their search mode. He was curious about the characteristics of an SS rank hunter. Jong-do was terribly surprised by what he saw. The opponent had an option available, a 3rd level game. The young man received a message that his level 3 talent communication had reacted with the level 3 talent game of his interlocutor. Contact between the talents has begun, and a forced reset of the game talent. Jong-do didn't understand what was even happening. Suddenly, Makina appeared in the portal that opened from above. Jong-do was once again surprised. The girl said that she hadn't seen Mr. Jong-do for a long time. Makina stated that she stopped time briefly to be able to talk to the young man. And indeed, time had been stopped. The owner of the house sat without moving. Makina said she was very glad she made it on time. The girl said if she had been even a second late, the young man would have been torn apart. The boy was terrified. With a level 3 communication skill, the young man had begun the process of forcibly raising the level of his game talent. The young man couldn't believe it. Was his talent level really increasing right now? Jong-do wondered if that wasn't a good thing. He couldn't understand what was the cause of the problem. Makina said that talents are given at birth and will accompany him until his death in old age. However, the fact that his talent is changing means that his fate is also changing as they talk. The human body cannot endure such a thing. The young man didn't know how to react to what he had heard. Makina said that's why she's giving the young man this necklace. As long as the young man wears this necklace, it will take all the damage of overloading his body. Makina added that also this necklace will give the young man the needed boost in luck. Jong-do asked, "So all he has to do is just wear that necklace?" The girl replied that it was exactly that. In addition to that, it has a few simple spells on it so the young man doesn't have to worry about it being stolen. The girl bowed and said that for now, she would look for a safer way for the young man to increase his talents. Makina disappeared. Kang Hai-chun continued and said that as a fan of the young boys, he couldn't dream of something like this. Jong-do assumed that the person he was talking to also had a talent for video games. He knew that he had a third level. Jong-do asked if his interlocutor had thought about playing in a professional league. He thought that everyone would have such a desire if they interacted with professionals. Kang Hai-chun said that he has tried playing before, but he likes watching others play more than doing it himself. Even now, he's forced to play a tedious RPG. It's a sad irony. Did Jong-do notice that his interlocutor probably has a SS level character? The interviewee said that in any case, he believes that playing games and liking them are different things. Jong-do agreed with this statement. Jong-do brought it to Liu Shan's attention that he had gotten 2 gold cards in a row. The young man kissed the necklace and said he knew that this thing was very useful. Liu Shan was surprised. Why is the young man thanking the necklace? After all, it was only his merit. Jong-do agreed and said that he would now kiss dear Liu Shan. The emperor shouted for the young man not to do so. Sister Charity Nightingale appeared and said she apologized for intruding on this personal relationship. Jong-do took the emperor aside and said that he was very happy to see the woman. The young man said that the Sister of Mercy's healing skill will be very useful when he is in any dangerous situation. This skill doesn't require much mana, so he's sure he can use it. The young man thought that in this case, he was out of luck. He didn't have any more mana for the binding lottery. The young man thought it didn't matter in this case. He would just take the opportunity to exchange the ticket for his power. Jong-do said that he has faith in Liu Shan again. Liu Shan raised his level by 3 points during the lottery. The emperor looked at the young man and asked why he was so disappointed this time. The emperor said, because if he raises his level, the young man will increase his characteristics. After all, it's obvious. Jong-do thought about it and agreed. The young man laughed and apologized for misinterpreting the incoming information. The lottery machine spit out a single toxic capsule. Jong-do hadn't expected this. The young man shouted that it was impossible. Jong-do turned around and started to run away quickly. The emperor shouted after him, "Why is the young man reacting so inappropriately?" The emperor looked at the information that had caused the young man to go on the run. There was information that in 3 hours, Sang-hee would be in terrible danger. The girl must be saved. There was an emergency at the association. Someone silently snuck into the prisoner's cell and destroyed Sung Dong-hak. The girl was told they had no evidence, but since the camera footage had been deleted, it was safe to assume that one of their own had done it. Sang-hee thought that only a large and powerful organization could afford such a spy. The girl wondered how she could find this spy. The phone received a message from the squad leader that it was time for a dungeon patrol, rank A. Sang-hee quickly gathered herself and headed for the exit. She told her companion that she would talk about it when she got back. Sang-hee went on patrol with the axe she always carried with her. The girl decided that she should finish her patrol quickly and return to the headquarters, and continue the search for the spy. Sang-hee was patrolling the area. Everything was quiet around the area. It was a routine situation. Suddenly, the girl felt dense mana around her. The sky changed its color. There was a reason for that. There was a rupture nearby. This rupture wasn't easy either. Sang-hee decided it was a trap. Strange people showed up. They must have known the girl was going on patrol, so they planned another breakup. Sang-hee radioed headquarters and reported her location. She warned that there had been a breach and requested reinforcements. The girl decided that she had to move faster towards the epicenter. She quickened her pace. She even began to run. Seo Sang-hee thought that even if it was a trap, she could handle it. The axe would help her. The girl realized if she didn't do anything now, the monsters would scatter around. When Sang-hee approached the portal, some of the monsters were already up there. The girl prepared her axe to attack. With an experienced eye, the young one determined that it was a lycanthrope. Lycanthrope, a difficult opponent. The monsters screamed and jumped towards Sang-hee as they pushed off. She prepared to repel the attack. The lycanthrope tried to tear the girl apart with its powerful paw. She dodged and counterattacked the attacker with her axe. The girl thought that the monsters were taking advantage of the fact that she was surrounded and attacking her one by one. Sang-hee was hard to take by surprise. She swung her axe and scattered her opponents in all directions. The girl dodged and jumped high up. At the same time, she swung her axe. The opponent did not expect this maneuver. The axe came down on the monster's head. The enemy was powerfully deactivated. He had no chance of escape. Sang-hee looked up. In front of her was a huge monster. It was the boss. The girl said that he was the one she was just waiting for. The monster glared with demonic eyes. Its roar spread to the entire neighborhood. Sang-hee, preparing to attack, said that it looked like someone didn't eat enough porridge as a child. Her opponent is tall, but you can't look at his bony body without crying. The girl said that the only way to train such a naughty dog was to give it some love. Sang-hee swung around and delivered a powerful blow to her opponent. The beast screamed wildly. After a while, the girl said that this time the danger was over, and one had to catch one's breath. The monster boss was lying next to her. He had an axe sticking out of his head. Suddenly, someone applauded the young lady and said, "Bravo!" The girl noticed that hooded men had appeared. One of them said that he was truly grateful for such an incredible show. It is not for nothing that the girl is called the protector of the association. Sang-hee stood up to her full height and looked around. She was surrounded by a large number of unknown warriors. Their faces were covered by masks. The girl gripped her axe tighter in her hands. She thought that this was a karma guild. She didn't expect that they could stoop to such a low level. The interlocutor spread his hands and said, "Why is it always karma to blame for everything?" He added that the girl was wrong. The warrior added that they are just a bunch of haters who unrealistically want to destroy Seo Sang-hee. The axe girl thought her business was bad. But she's already called for backup, so she just needs to buy some time. The masked man asked if she was counting on backup. "I'm sorry to disappoint her, but backup isn't coming." The man showed the walkie-talkie in his hands and said there was someone in the association who didn't like her either. The masked men around them laughed. The speaker said that sooner or later this champion of justice was bound to suffer such a fate, and asked where to start. She should be more careful in her next life. No one can save this life. Suddenly, blood appeared on the villain's body. The man didn't understand anything and threw his head up. He asked, "What's going on?" A young man appeared out of nowhere and said he didn't have to worry about it. The young man added that backup had just arrived. The masked man fell face down. The young man was Young-do. He came to Sang-hee's rescue just in time. The masked men didn't realize who this imposter was. Where did he come from and why is he acting so defiantly? The young man had acquired a skill, the flower blade dance. He alone scattered the masked enemies left and right. The young man was excellent on his feet and wielded his blade professionally. John Doe, finding himself near the girl, asked if she was okay. Sang-hee asked what he was doing here. The young man thought that fortunately, he had arrived in time. Since it was past midnight, all of his mana had been restored. Jongdo said he came here to save the girl. "We have to get in with the enemies first, and then they'll discuss the details." The young man said he could guess what happened here. "Since the girl stopped the rift, we should concentrate on escaping from here." Sang-hee replied that it would be very difficult to do that. It seems like every single one of the enemies has a C rank, and some of them even have an A rank, and they all want to destroy her. Suddenly, the hero, Yuga Sega, appeared. The girl angrily asked why the young man had decided to get involved in something so dangerous. Sega said they were doomed. Why did the young man come here? The young man looked at the number of opponents with his gaze and said that indeed he was at a disadvantage right now. Jong-do looked at Sang-hee and thought that the girl was pretty exhausted from the previous battle. The young man thought that he had no choice but to summon Yuja Sega, who was guaranteed to come to him from the top 10. It would be very difficult to deal with all the enemies. Sang-hee apologized to the young man. She said if she knew this was going to happen, of course she would have warned him in advance. Jong-do said if the girl was going to continue wasting time with idle talk, he'd rather hear words of thanks than apologies. The guy says he wants to put this conversation on hold for later. He has a plan to get them out of here now. The masked men continued to remain puzzled. Who is this young man? After all, they had cut the girl off from the reinforcements. They assumed that there was a spy among them. The leader told everyone to be quiet. He took off his hood and walked over to the man who lay motionless beside him. The masked stranger said that their opponent had taken down 4 rank B hunters while remaining undetected. We should consider that he might be a rank S hunter. Everyone should continue to follow the general plan. The masked men created a circle with Sang-hee and Jong-do in the center. They started running around the young people. They probably wanted to make them dizzy. The young man shouted for the girl to be on guard. The enemy is preparing an attack. One of the villains pulled out a hunting knife and decided to engage in hand-to-hand combat with Jong-do, who had a sword in his hands. This attack seemed unusual to the young man. Many arrows began to fall from the sky. That could have hit him. Jong-do wrapped his arms around his companion, wanting to protect her, and shouted for her to be safe. The villain, who wanted to attack the young man with a hunting knife, was struck dead by arrows. Behind him stood a group of archers. Jong-do, grabbing the girl in his arms, instantly left the target area to avoid being injured by the arrows. After running away to a safe distance, Jong-do lowered the girl to the ground and assessed the situation. The young man called the archers crazy scumbags. He added that they don't think about their comrades at all. The masked men were surprised. Jong-do and Sang-hee found themselves surrounded again. The young men did not let go of their weapons. One of the masked men approached the victim. He stepped on his head and said it was an honor for each of them. The masked man said they were honored to give their worthless lives to fulfill his plan. Sega said that it was disgusting. Jong-do added, "That's why it's pointless to try to negotiate peacefully with these people." Jong-do shouted that he would clear the way now and told the girl to follow him. The young man rushed forward. The guy added that if they kept moving in the same direction, they would be able to get out. The young man warned the girl to behave carefully. Jong-do started hand-to-hand combat, and the opponents couldn't withstand his attack. The young man destroyed the enemies using his longsword. The girl tried to keep up with him. Her axe worked tirelessly. He was clearing a path for them. Sega warned that the young men were being attacked from behind. With no other way to evade his opponent's attack, the young man jumped high up and did a somersault. The young man landed behind his opponents, who never realized anything. Sang-hee said the young man is very agile. He must be doing gymnastics, right? Sang-hee said that he has recently started playing martial arts games. The young man saw the exit and told the girl to follow him. That's where their salvation lies. If they can get out of here, they will stay alive. The young people were again surrounded. There was no way to get out of this encirclement. One of the masked men said, "Did the young man really think he could escape them with such skills? After all, he is unable to break even a simple illusion." The masked man told the young man to forget about rescue. They're not getting out of here alive. Sega told the young man that surely that guy must be their leader. Jong-do decided to get rid of him first. The young man told his companion to exercise caution. He would try to get rid of the leader of the rivals. The young woman told the young man not to worry about her. The young man used the blitz skill. He became faster than lightning. The enemies didn't even have time to blink their eyes before they fell to the ground. Those of them who were in his way. Just a second later, the young man was already standing near the leader of the enemies with a naked sword. The villain, frightened, shouted for help. The leader kept yelling for his accomplices to attack the young man while he was busy and unable to answer them. It wasn't easy to attack the young man. The young man activated the skill, Hovering Cloud. The next technique was the sword dance of the floating cloud. The young man struck a stabbing blow at his opponent. The opponent was able to react in time and blocked Jong-do's punch. Sega said that the young man wasn't that strong anymore. It looks like his strength is also running out. The opponent asked the young man Did he really think he could save Sang-hee and handle him at the same time? The girl found herself shot in the leg and stumbled and fell. The villain was right on top of her. He swung his sword and said that he was going to finish the girl with his own hands. In the same instant, Jung-do jumped up to the villain and threw the villain far back with a blow of his sword. The young man picked up the girl and asked how she was feeling. He apologized and said that he had a hard time overpowering their leader. Sang-hee said it was her fault. She couldn't buy him enough time. Sega stated that she was running out of time. She asked if the young man had a plan. The young man replied that he had a plan. He was not going to die. The villains considered the option in which they attack their opponents at the same time and tear them apart. After all, they have plenty of time to straighten them out. Whatever the young man is up to, they must keep attacking to corner the young men. The ring was shrinking. Though there was no angle, the young man's room for maneuver was shrinking. Jung-do stated that it looks like he only has one choice left. The young man summoned Emperor Liu Shan. He had to pay 4 mana for it. Liu Shan turned to the young man. He has a talent for getting into trouble. Or is he getting into it of his own free will? The young man can't go a day without an incident. Jung-do said, "It seems like the Emperor has sinned in something in his past life." The young man added, "However, he needs the Emperor's help." He asked him to name the strongest general he knew. The young man said that Liu Shan, his last hope. The young man had to choose a combination. The young man had 2 cards, Zhang Fei and Liu Shan. Zhang Fei and Liu Shan. They already have a very strong bond with each other. He would most likely be able to summon someone from the Shu realm. The girl thought they needed someone to protect them while they dashed through the crowd of enemies. Jung-do stated that he only knew one person who could help them. The young man hoped for his luck. The masked men couldn't understand what was happening. An explosive cloud appeared in the air. One of the masked men said he had a bad feeling about it. "We should get away from the young man." The archers attacked this strange cloud and fired many arrows at it. The arrows, having lost speed, descended into the area where Sang-hee was standing. The girl figured she wouldn't be able to dodge all the arrows. She would have to try to avoid hitting her vital organs. Jung-do was not satisfied with this arrangement. He swung his weapon and destroyed all the arrows flying towards his companion. The masked men were astonished. How was this man able to deactivate all their arrows? The young man thought that the Lord of all weapons had perfectly recreated the ancient weapon. The user's characteristics increased when he was attacked from afar. This time, the young man was assisted by Jin Chong-do, Zhao's sleeping dragon. The young man turned to the girl and told her to rely on him. He would be able to protect her. The user's characteristics increased when he protected other targets. The masked man called out to his companions. He said there's no need to be afraid. After all, they are outnumbered. The masked men decided to attack the young man and finish him off for good. Jung-do was ready to face the enemy in an unequal fight. The young man decided to act differently. He said that sometimes the best defense is offense. The young man went on the offense. The boy once again began to scatter his opponents, wielding his cold weapon. His spear was destroying all the opponents he could get his hands on. The opponents were getting smaller, but they still dominated in numbers. The enemy came so close that he was at arm's length. The masked man said that the young man was now surrounded on all sides definitively, and he was about to be destroyed. Jung-do then used the spinning dragon spear. The masked men were frightened. They had not seen such a reception before. Now they wanted to run away from the young man, but they could not do it. The enemy was almost completely destroyed. The leader could not understand how the young man could do it. The young man would disappear and appear elsewhere. It was impossible not only to attack him, but also to see him. His opponents didn't know how to fight him. They couldn't destroy him. The leader of the masked men said their mission was more important than a few lives. The villain said that his associates must destroy Sang-hee now, because their main target is this girl. He sees every move they make. The leader added, "So they must die, but fulfill their task." He turned around and rushed at the girl to attack. Sang-hee was immediately confronted by Jung-do. The young man figured out the enemy's plan. He decided to protect the girl no matter what it took. Jung-do put Sang-hee on his shoulder and ran away. The young man decided to save the girl and himself by all means. The young man reasonably assumed that taking the sword would be better than holding the spear in one hand. A Qinghan sword appeared in the young man's hands. He ignores the certain value of defending opponents. Jung-do suddenly stopped and turned around to face the enemy. Several villains were immediately deactivated. It was quite unexpected for the opponent. After stabbing another enemy through and through with his sword, the young man said, "It seems they are no longer human." An aide appeared and told the young man that the opponent's attacks were aimed specifically at the girl. The knight offered to test this assumption. He said that the girl could be thrown high up and watch the reaction of the enemies. Jung-do thought that was a pretty good idea. The young man took the girl comfortably and apologized to her. The girl did not understand. Forgiveness for what? Jung-do shouts for Sang-hee not to be afraid. He gave his word that he would definitely catch her. The young man tossed the girl high up with all his might. Sang-hee screamed with fear. She had never climbed so high without a safety net before, but she could see all her opponents as if they were in the palm of her hand. The young man told all opponents to prepare for a shakeup. Now he's going to start acting like an adult. The masked men stopped and paid attention to the girl flying overhead. At that time, Jung-do visited each of them and pierced through with his sword. The knight aide told the young man that it was incredible. The young man himself had not expected such speed from himself. The young man was assessing the result of his work from the sidelines, but he still had to